CD 9.
How about if I ask you to do something that wouldn't get you arrested? Like what? How are things going with you and Eddie? Great, said Lily. Where is he now? That's a stupid question. You know where he is. New Zealand. And you'd never cheat on him. You just wouldn't, I know that too. Lily pulled a what are you on about face. No, of course I wouldn't. Okay, so how about if you kissed someone else? Dan looked at her. Would that make you feel guilty? Yes. It wouldn't have to wreck your relationship, though, and he'd never know about it. You wouldn't tell him, and nor would the other person, who you know you can absolutely trust. It would just be between the two of you. Completely private. He could see the pulse flickering at the base of her throat, the sheen of her skin there, the movement of her neck as she swallowed. Then her gaze locked back on him and she said, So you're saying it's something I could do that would make me feel ashamed of myself, and then I'd understand what it felt like to have done a bad thing? That's pretty much it. Seems like a logical plan to me. He smiled fractionally. The silence stretched between them. High above their heads, birds were singing to each other in the trees, and from across the lake came the sound of a car driving up through the village. Closer to hand, a bee buzzed among the clumps of wild celandines and dog roses. Finally, her voice husky and barely above a whisper, Lily said, It's not just Eddie who mustn't know. You have to promise not to tell anyone else. She swallowed again. Anyone at all? Oh God, it was going to happen. It was actually going to happen. I promise. Dan nodded slowly. And you know you can trust me. Go on then. Her dark eyes huge, her breathing uneven, Lily reached up and lightly touched the side of his face. Let's do it. He lowered his mouth to hers, hesitated for a second a millimetre above it, then closed his eyes and made the first contact. His lips brushed against hers and he felt her tremble, which was quite a feat considering the amount of turmoil engulfing his own body right now. Oh, but this was something he'd longed to do, had dreamt of doing for so many years. Was it any wonder his hormones had gone into overdrive? He was kissing Lily, properly kissing her at last, and the reality of it was every bit as dizzying as he'd hoped. Her lips were soft, she tasted of summer and strawberries, and her fingers were sliding around the back of his neck. It was a mind-blowing experience, and one Dan knew he'd never forget as long as he lived. 2 weeks ago, in the kitchen of Goldstone House, he'd held and reassured her, and it had felt fantastic, but this was up to a whole stratospheric new level. It wasn't perfect, what with one arm still being strapped into a sling, but imagine what it would be like if he had both hands free. Okay, it hadn't been nearly enough, but it was going to have to do, seeing as this so-called exercise was meant to be for Lily's benefit, not his own. It almost killed Dan to kiss her for one last second, then ease away, but he somehow managed it. For a long moment, it seemed as if the air was vibrating between them. He looked at Lily, from her beautiful mouth to her even more beautiful eyes, and waited for her to break the silence. What he wanted her to say, of course, was, That's it. I'm going to tell Eddie it's all over. You're the one I want to be with. It's you. It's always been you. He held his breath, silently willing her to say it. Oh God, and she was still gazing up at him. What was going through her mind? Well, it worked, Lily said at last, and there was a faint tremor in her voice. It did? How are you feeling? Terrible, she exhaled, then broke into a rueful smile. Just awful. Why? What he wanted was for her to shake her head in disbelief and say, Because now I know how much I love you. She briefly closed her eyes, then opened them again. Just like you said. Because now I've done something I shouldn't have done, and it's not fair on Eddie. I've betrayed him. He doesn't deserve that. Not the reply he'd been hoping for, to be honest, but probably the one he'd expected. Oh well, the fantasy had been nice while it lasted. Well, that's good. So it's mission accomplished. We set out to make you feel guilty, and now you do. He could still feel the imprint of her warm mouth on his, But the moment had passed. It was time to revert to friendship mode. He shrugged and said flippantly, "That's what I call a result." "Well, thanks. Don't mention it." He smiled briefly, as if she were some just-met girl who meant nothing to him. "All part of the service." Lily nodded. She sat up and reached into the punnet of raspberries. "You won't tell anyone, though, you do promise?" It lacerated him to think she still needed to be reassured. "I've already promised. You know you can trust me." "I thought I could trust other people." Her expression was rueful. "Turns out I couldn't. I suppose I'm— Ow!" Dan's gaze had been fixed on her eyes. If he'd been paying more attention, he would have seen the wasp perched on the raspberry she was putting into her mouth. By the time he batted it away, it was too late. Lily had been stung on her bottom lip. "Bastard wasp!" She clapped her hand over her mouth and let out a squeak of pain. "That hurts!" "Here, let me look." Dan knew she wasn't allergic to wasp stings. He suspected he just wanted an excuse to touch her again. Moving closer and nudging her hand away, he held the side of her face and studied the site of the sting. Not a lot to see, to be honest. Just a bit of redness and maybe a slight swelling. "If it was a snake bite, I'd offer to suck out the poison," he said. "That's really helpful, thank you. If my lip swells up like a balloon, I'm going to look ridiculous." Lily fretted. At that moment, her phone began to ring and she let out a groan of despair. "Oh no, it's Eddie." Dan moved back. Lily flapped her hand at him to stay silent, and he spent the next few minutes listening to her telling Eddie that she'd just been stung on the lip by a wasp, while neglecting to mention where she was and who she was with. By the time she ended the call, her bottom lip was visibly bigger and she was visibly more upset. "What is it?" said Dan. "Oh, come on, you know perfectly well what. We did that thing we did." Lily gestured helplessly between them. "And less than a minute later, I'm stung by a wasp. On my mouth," she emphasised. "And?" She stuck out her swollen bottom lip. "If that isn't karma, I don't know what is." Chapter 42. 24 hours had passed since that kiss, and Lily was still so shaken by the experience she was beginning to wonder if she'd ever feel normal again. Oh God, though, it had been so completely and utterly mind-blowing. She'd expected it to be a bit special, what with her having secretly wanted to kiss Dan for years, but no way had she expected it to take her over like this. It was like having your body infiltrated by a spirit and being incapable of controlling any aspect of it. Her brain was flatly refusing to concentrate on anything else. Her heart quickened every time she thought about Dan, which was all the time, pretty much, and production of adrenaline was in overdrive. Plus, there was the guilt issue, because there was undoubtedly guilt there. But try as she might, Lily knew she definitely wasn't feeling anywhere near guilty enough. She heaved a sigh and looked at her reflection in the dressing table mirror. What a mess. What an unholy mess. And what had she done? Only ended up making her own life that much more difficult. Because it clearly hadn't meant anything to Dan. He'd come up with the idea on the spur of the moment and done the deed without stopping to think twice about it. Boom. Kiss administered, job done. She was the one who should have guessed just how much turmoil it would set off. She should have said no when he'd first made the offer, laughed it off and not allowed it to happen. Except she hadn't done that, had she? Instead, like a complete numpty, she'd let him go ahead and do it, unleashing all kinds of bodily havoc. Twing went her phone, and Lily jumped because pretty much everything was making her jumpy right now. Then she did it again when she saw the text that had flashed up on the screen from Eddie. Skype? Oh God, she just couldn't do it. Not yet, not while she was in this much of a state. It was hard enough speaking to him on the phone. Actually looking him in the eyes and pretending everything was fine was definitely more than she could handle right now. Hastily, she texted back. You'd get a fright if you did. My lips swelling up like a football. I look awful. You see? Even that wasn't true. Her lip was fine. She was lying to conceal her guilt, but the real guilt wasn't what Dan thought it was. As far as he was concerned, the plan had been that she would feel bad because she'd physically kissed another man. What he was blissfully unaware of, thank goodness, was the fact that she felt bad because it had been the best kiss, the best 30 seconds and the most heavenly experience of her life. Another text from Eddie lit up the phone screen. I don't mind how scary you look. Kiss, kiss, kiss. Lily texted back. Maybe not, but I do. Can't talk now, I'll call you later. Hope your TV thing goes well. Kiss, kiss, kiss. He replied, Okay, love you, kiss. Excuse me? Lily looked at the message again. He'd definitely written love you at the end. Okay, that was weird. He'd never said those words to her before, so why would he be texting them now? Did he actually mean it? Was he texting the fact that he loved her because it was less terrifying than saying it to her face? Did she even want him to be saying it given the situation she currently found herself in? Lily closed her eyes, then opened them again and gave her reflection in the mirror a get-real look. Because it wasn't as if she had two lovely men after her and all she had to do was choose which one she liked best. Eddie Tesler was really nice, but he was from a show-businessy parallel universe, and she suspected she was a bit of a novelty, more of a passing whim for him than anything serious and lasting. And she was fine with that, because deep down she knew theirs was a relationship that had never been destined to last. It was a dalliance and it was fun, but it would never be long-term. There were too many differences between them for that. Whilst Dan was simply Dan, her oldest friend and the last person you'd ever want to get properly involved with, because Dan just didn't do proper involvement. If she were to give him her heart, he would break it. And life in Stanton Langley would be awkward forevermore, which was why she had to get over the kiss. Her phone burst into life and she saw that Eddie was now calling her. Hi, she said. I'm still not Skyping. I know. It's okay. This is a bit embarrassing, actually. I pressed send on that last text before realising what I'd done. During the ensuing awkward pause, Lily started to laugh. Thank goodness for that, you didn't mean it. Exactly. Eddie sounded relieved. It's how I used to end texts to my last girlfriend. I just did it this time without thinking. I didn't want you to wonder what it meant. I was wondering, said Lily, still smiling. It seemed a bit weird. Anyway, mystery solved. I'm glad you called to explain. And I'm glad you're okay about it. I mean, I do like you a lot, you know I do. But it's too soon for any of that love stuff. God, yes. Thanks. Bye, said Eddie. Bye, love you, teased Lily. Ha ha, very funny. Less than 5 seconds after ending the call, another text arrived. This time it was from Dan. Where are you? Have you fallen asleep? Dinner's ready and we're waiting for you to get your lazy backside over here, or I'll eat all your roast potatoes myself. Kiss. Lily dusted a bit of powder over her freckled nose, slicked on some lip gloss and jumped to her feet. She could put on a carefree face and carry on acting as if they were just friends. She had to, because they were. Rapidly, she texted back, Touch any of my roast potatoes and you're a dead man. On my way. Then she paused and added a single kiss to match the one Dan had used to end his text to her. One tiny electronic kiss. Who'd have imagined the amount of upheaval a real-life one could cause? Declan had never before worked so hard or such long hours. Okay, maybe he had, but never before with such intent and purpose. The last week had been a blur of activity, coordinating other workers and getting as much done as humanly possible. In his mind, he'd wanted everything finished by the time Coral returned home from the south of France. Superstitiously, and he'd never been superstitious in his life, he'd decided that if the renovation could be completed, all would be well. He bloody hoped so, anyway. The other idea that had been unfurling in his brain was one that ran along the lines of how about if he were to completely change his mind about the cottage? Because if everything did work out as he very much hoped it would, maybe he needn't sell or rent it out after all. He could afford to keep it for his own use, make it his escape from the pressures of city life, his idyllic weekend retreat. And now it was Saturday afternoon. Weaver's cottage had been transformed and Coral was at this very moment on her way back from the airport. Declan stood in the centre of the knocked-through kitchen diner with its stunning room-length view over the valley and the rolling hills beyond. The kitchen units were white and the worktops dark green, the surfaces illuminated by pools of light from the spotlights strategically installed beneath the wall units. With its white floor, sleek silver accessories and accents of crimson, It was unrecognisable as the cluttered, unsanitary, nicotine-stained kitchen that had belonged to old Malcolm for almost 70 years. He'd taken the call from Lily an hour ago. "Coral's on her way home. Are you going to be at the cottage this afternoon? Because I told her how much work you'd done and she can't wait to see how it's looking now. She said if your car's outside, she'll stop off and you can give her the grand tour." Whereupon Declan, who had actually planned to drive into Chipping Norton to get his chainsaw fixed, had casually replied, "Oh, I'll be here." 20 minutes later, he heard the sound of a taxi pulling up outside the front gate. Unable to play it cool and wait for the doorbell to ring, Declan pulled open the door, waved to Coral and called out, "Hi!" She was looking fantastic, bright-eyed and happy. Oh God, it was so good to see her again. "Hooray, hello! I'm longing to see everything you've done." She jumped out of the taxi and greeted him with a hug before breaking away as the driver hauled her turquoise suitcase out of the back. "Oh, thank you so much." Extending the handle and taking charge of the case, Coral paid him before turning back to Declan. "Is this okay? Will you be able to give me a lift home after we finished here?" "Of course. No problem. I could have picked you up from the airport," said Declan. "It wouldn't have been any trouble." "Huh. Talk about understatement, it would have been the very opposite of trouble." "Oh, no. Coral waved her free hand. "I won't let anyone do that. It's so mortifying when the flight's delayed and whoever it is ends up having to wait for hours to pick you up. So you get a taxi instead and the flight's never delayed." "Exactly that." She grinned at him. "Sod's law, works like a charm every time." Declan took the case from her. "Come along then, let's get inside." "Can't wait," said Coral. "I've been looking forward to this." Not as much as he had. Declan led the way into the cottage, his heart thudding with anticipation. He would show her everything that had been done first, get it out of the way, then tell her that his relationship with Gail was over. He'd pictured her reaction so many times. Of course she would be surprised, then sympathetic, but there would also, with a bit of luck, be a glimmer of relief and hope in her eyes. And then he would confide in her the reason for his having ended it, and he'd witness the expression on her face, of disbelief mingling with growing joy and delight as she finally understood what he was. "Oh my goodness, look at this place, what a difference!" Coral exclaimed as she stepped into the kitchen diner. "It's fantastic!" While she was gazing around in wonder, Declan secretly gazed in wonder at her. She was wearing a pink and white striped shirt and her favourite jeans. Her tan had deepened, accentuating the clear blueness of her eyes, and her blonde hair was fastened up at the sides with white clips which revealed her slender neck. The idea of kissing that neck was, "So you listen to me then?" Smiling, she swung round to him. "Sorry?" It was hard to stop thinking about her neck. "The splashes of red." Coral pointed to the velvet cushions on the window seat, the blinds, and the glossy wall tiles behind the sink. "I can't believe you remembered." Declan remembered every single word she'd ever uttered. On the day of the property auction, he'd been explaining to her that he normally redecorated in neutral colours, and she'd said, "Oh, but don't you love a pop of colour? Something bright to liven things up. I just think it makes all the difference." "I gave it a go," he replied good-naturedly, "and you were right. You've done a great job, seriously, I love it." Coral was investigating the cupboards now, opening and closing drawers, admiring the spectacular view from the window. "I could live here myself." There were so many possible replies to that, but before he could even formulate one, she was off, disappearing into the living room to admire the light ivory decor, with accents of mulberry and plum. Then she ran upstairs and he showed her the bathroom, followed by the smaller spare room, and finally the main bedroom. In here the walls were sunny yellow, the carpet was thick and pale gold, and the fitted units were white. This time the accent of colour was supplied by the view from the windows, of the valley spread out below them. "You've done it," Coral said simply. "It's just perfect." What Declan wanted to say was, "So are you." But it was too soon. Instead, he nodded. "Thanks, it's turned out well, I'm happy." Coral was smiling up at him. "So you should be." Hopefully he was about to become happier. "Shall we go downstairs and have a coffee? I want to hear all about your holiday. Did you have a great time?" "Oh, the best. I'm so glad I went." She moved past him, wafting unfamiliar perfume in her wake. "You smell different." Declan couldn't help saying it as he followed her down the staircase. I know. I bought it in a little shop in Saint-Tropez. Fancied a change. What do you think? Nice. Was it nice? He wasn't so sure. It was heavier and spicier than the scent she'd always worn before. To change the subject, Declan said, "You're looking well?" Because that was definitely true. Thanks. Back in the kitchen diner, Coral occupied one of the crimson-cushioned stools around the central island while he switched on the coffee maker. I feel fantastic. Everyone there was so friendly. And I've got back into painting. Can you believe it? It's like a miracle. Lily told me you had. Declan smiled because she was glowing with happiness and her joy was contagious. I can't wait to see what you've done. And you know, he indicated the walls around them, if you did feel like donating one to a deserving cause, that'd be great. Well, maybe. Then again, you haven't seen them yet. Coral's eyes were sparkling. Anyway, how's Gail? Talk about the perfect opener. Aware that the moment had arrived, Declan wiped his suddenly prickling palms on the sides of his trousers and opened his mouth to say, Actually, oh, made me jump. Coral pulled her phone out of her jeans pocket as it broke into what sounded like a load of inebriated jazz musicians at the end of a long night. This was new too. When she saw who was calling, she said, Sorry, can I just answer this? Of course. Declan opened the glass-fronted cupboard on the wall above the coffee machine and took down 2 stainless steel cups and saucers. You knew you liked someone when you gave them a cup and a saucer. Hi. Yes. Oh gosh, that was quick. Coral swung her legs as she spoke to whoever was on the other end of the line. Was it Lily? Or one of the staff at the yard? Her eyes bright, she listened for a few more seconds, then said, Okay, well, this is perfect. Just before you reach Stanton Langley, you'll pass the Valentine Hotel on the left-hand side of the road. Then, about 500 metres further on, there's a cottage with a dark green Audi parked outside. Declan's just been showing me everything he's done to the place. Honestly, it's amazing. But yes, I'll look out for you. See you in a minute. Bye. Chapter 43. There was a slow lurching sensation in Declan's stomach, like descending 50 stories in a lift. The tone of her voice and the light in her eyes belatedly told him that he really didn't want to hear what was coming next. Except he was going to have to hear it. Don't worry about coffee. Coral was already sliding down from her stool, reaching for her shoulder bag. And no need to give me a lift into the village either. That was a friend of mine on the phone. Her cheeks were flushed as she fiddled with the fastening on her bag. Declan murmured politely, Oh, yes? Don't say it. Please don't say it. His name's Trent, and we met on the painting holiday. It was just the most amazing coincidence. There were 7 of us staying there, and it turned out he lives only 15 miles away from here in Cirencester. Coral shook her head in disbelief. Isn't that crazy? And we hit it off from the moment I arrived. Oh gosh, it sounds silly to say it, but it felt like fate. She rattled on, as if it were meant to happen. The years since Nick died have been so difficult and so lonely. I honestly never imagined I'd feel this way again. I thought I'd had my happy life as much as I deserved, and now it was over. But then the feelings came back and, well, it happened. Like everyone always tells you, just when you least expect it. I went to the south of France to get back into painting, and there he was. Trent. He lost his wife 5 years ago and felt just the same as me. But all it took was a couple of hours on that first evening, and we just knew something special was happening. It was like magic. Declan nodded. He was lost for words, but Coral was gazing at him, waiting for him to speak. That's great news. He forced himself to smile and sound delighted for her. Fantastic, I'm so pleased. I'm also lying. Thanks. I can't tell you how brilliant it feels. She laughed. It's like being a teenager again. I'm all fluttery. Okay, this wasn't helping matters at all. It simply wasn't what he needed to hear. And now, in addition, they could both hear the car slowing to a halt outside. 10 minutes ago it had been a taxi bringing Coral back to him, the most wonderful sound in the world. Now it was the complete opposite. Here he is. Coral jumped up and reached for her suitcase. Come on, you have to meet him. Oh, joy. But what other choice did he have? Declan followed her out of the cottage. You found us, Coral exclaimed happily. Oh my God, look at you. Even more beautiful than I remembered. Trent was tall, fair-haired, and as tanned as she was. He was wearing a green check shirt, blue linen shorts, and deck shoes. Come here, he ordered, holding out his arms to her. I've missed you so much. They hugged. Trent kissed her on the mouth. Declan averted his gaze until Coral pulled away and explained laughingly. He's joking. His flight was only 2 hours earlier than mine. I still missed you, though. Trent gave her waist a squeeze, then turned to Declan. Hi there, Dec. I've been hearing all about you. And your lady friend, of course. Grace, is it? Gail, said Coral. She's lovely. Trent was enthusiastically shaking his hand. Now wasn't the time to make the announcement. Declan said, She isn't here, I'm afraid. Well, I can't wait to meet her too. I'm looking forward to getting to know all Coral's friends. Has she been telling you about our time in Grimaud? Kind of. Ha! Not all about it, obviously. No, but it was great. Best week of my life. Mind-blowing. He winked cheerily. Lucky me, eh? Okay, let's get this case into the back of the car. The suitcase was stowed in the boot of his very clean bottle green Vauxhall Vectra. Trent then held open the passenger door and ushered Coral inside. Coral, fastening her seatbelt, said to Declan, We're all having dinner at the Star tonight. You'll join us, won't you? I'll book a table for 7:30. Great. Could he bear to? Maybe. Maybe not. We'll see you later, she said. Revving the engine, Trent raised his hand in farewell. Bye for now. They drove off in a cloud of dust, and Declan realised there was no way he could share dinner with them. It would be just too hard to handle after the hopes and plans he'd had for her return. It looked like Gail had been wrong about Coral's feelings for him after all. Or maybe it had been a fleeting mini-crush that had now been well and truly eclipsed by the all-consuming, all-singing and dancing love affair that had swept her off her feet. Declan sighed. Either way, he'd messed up and missed out. As they drove away from Weaver's cottage, Coral silently congratulated herself on having handled the situation without doing anything embarrassing. It was fine. She'd managed it. She hadn't made a fool of herself, and there'd definitely been none of those giveaway looks of longing that Gail had previously observed. She'd learned from her earlier mistakes and retained her dignity. Thank God. Mind you, it was a lot easier when you had a distraction in the form of Trent. You okay? As they stopped at the traffic lights, he briefly rested his left hand on her knee. What are you thinking about? Coral admired his profile. I'm thinking we had a perfect holiday. We definitely did. And now we're back home. On to the next phase. I just hope Lily likes me. Of course she will. Coral's tone was reassuring. Seriously, though, what a difference a week could make. It wasn't something she'd expected to happen, but it had. Trent had been a revelation. He had, by his own admission, fallen for her the moment they'd met. And yes, it had caught her by surprise, but as he said, that was just the way he was. What you saw with him was what you got. If you knew what you wanted, why bother shilly-shallying about? Just seize the moment and go for it. Coral had been won over by his enthusiasm, his openness, his honesty. As a widower too, he knew what she'd been through. He was empathetic. Most of all, though, he liked her and wasn't afraid to show it, and he was available, which meant she was allowed to like him back. After the agony of having to hide her feelings for Declan, who was so lovely but so completely unavailable, it had come as a relief. Here was someone she could allow herself to fall in love with. Okay, it was too soon to call it love, but so far it had been a wonderful experience. She'd found herself relaxing and feeling normal again, and just loving the sensation of feeling normal. The last week had been a joyous whirl of sunshine and laughter, conversation and wine, and the gloriously pleasurable zing of growing attraction for this new man whom fate had brought into her life. Ironically, too, she owed it all to Declan and Gail. If she hadn't been panicked by Gail's terrifyingly astute observations, she would never have landed up in Grimaud and met Trent. Funny how fate worked sometimes. You could never tell, could you? Trent wasn't Declan. If she was being honest, he wasn't even close. But he was single and he was offering her a future. Coral's heart skittered at the thought of it. She'd taken an unexpected new direction, and maybe it was the right one. This could be the start of a whole new life. Patsy arrived back in Stanton Langley at 10 o'clock on Saturday evening. The cottage was unexpectedly tidy. Empty, too. She sent a quick text and 2 minutes later received the reply. Right. Not ideal, obviously, but it had to be done. Sick with fear, she walked down to the high street and crossed the road to the Star. The sky was pitch black with only a sliver of moon visible above the trees behind it. The white fairy lights strung up outside the pub glittered in the darkness and made it look so much more welcoming than it could well turn out to be. She knew they were in there. From here she could hear the sound of music, voices and laughter. When she walked in, would the place suddenly fall deathly silent, like in high noon? Her mouth was dry and she could no longer feel her knees. The last time she'd faced Lily, the encounter had ended just about as badly as it was possible to end. Patsy braced herself. It was time to find out if this one was due to be worse. "Well?" Coral said eagerly while Trent was up at the bar ordering a fresh round of drinks. "Do you like him?" Which was one of those questions to which it would be impossible to reply no. Luckily, Lily didn't need to. She nodded and said, "He's really nice," because it was so clearly what Coral wanted to hear. And Trent did seem nice. There was nothing to actively dislike about him. It was all just a bit sudden and unexpected, that was all. Like Coral, he was in his late 40s and had been widowed. He worked as the manager of an electrical store in Cirencester, loved to listen to jazz music, and was a keen amateur watercolourist in his free time. He had an open face, good table manners, and was cheerful and friendly. He was also quite clearly besotted with Coral. If Lily was completely honest, it did feel the tiniest bit odd seeing him holding Coral's hand, stroking her fingers and slowly rubbing the small of her back, but this was only because she wasn't used to witnessing such public displays of affection from someone who still felt to her like a stranger. Then again, he wasn't a stranger to Coral. She'd finally found someone she liked, and that was all that counted. It was definitely a good thing to have happened to her. Suspicious Minds was playing on the music system as Trent brought their drinks back to the table, and a few of the regulars were joining in with the chorus. "Ah, Elvis Presley. Can't beat a bit of Elvis. Elvis the pelvis," said Trent, sitting down and taking a gulp of lager. He winked at Coral. "Love me tender. Can't help falling in love." He reached for her hand once more and gave it a squeeze. "The wonder of you." Yikes. And now he was gazing dreamily into Coral's eyes. Was he about to burst into song and start serenading her? Lily exchanged a glance of alarm with Dan, who promptly leapt into the breach with, "Speaking of pelvises..." Oh God, now what was he about to say? "Sorry, what?" Coral was looking baffled too. "Remember Kyle, the boy we were at school with? The one who had that accident at Hestercombe Lake and broke his pelvis?" "Of course I do," Coral exclaimed. "That poor boy, wasn't he in hospital for weeks? And the farmer put a bull in the field after that so the rest of you couldn't get down to the lake." Dan nodded. "Lily and I were wondering what happened to him after his family left the area. We wanted to look him up, but neither of us can remember his surname." "Mc something? Or Mac something?" said Lily. "I'm not sure I ever even knew his name, not properly. It was McLannan or McLanahan or McClannan or MacAllan." She shrugged. "We tried Googling, but it was hopeless." "And I can't help you," said Coral. "I never even met him. No clue, sorry." "Oh." Her eyes had widened. For a split second, Lily thought Kyle's name had somehow come to her. The next moment, she realised it hadn't. Coral was staring straight past her across the pub. Lily met Dan's dark eyes once more and saw the concern in them coupled with the lack of surprise. That was when she knew who had just walked in and, in all probability, who had texted him 10 minutes ago. Well, it had to happen at some stage. Patsy couldn't stay away forever and never come back. Chapter 44. It was by the sheerest coincidence that the previous Elvis track had just faded away and been replaced by the opening chords of Devil in Disguise. Whooping with recognition and oblivious to the awkwardness of the situation, the regulars cheerily greeted Patsy's arrival, then returned their attention to the impromptu sing-along. Lily looked at Patsy and Patsy looked back, her expression carefully masked as she slowly threaded her way between the tables. "How are you feeling?" Dan kept his voice low. Lily shook her head. "I don't know." Across the table, Coral was explaining to Trent what was going on. Leaning sideways, Dan murmured, "Do you want me to kiss you again? Because I will. Right here in front of everyone." Lily couldn't move. His mouth was millimeters from her ear, and her ear was fizzing like a firework, hyper-aware of his proximity. She whispered, "Shush, stop it." "Okay, but you never know, it might help." Of course it wouldn't help, but the awful thing was she wanted it to happen. Not here, though, and not now. In private. Oh, God, stop thinking about it. But she knew what Dan was doing and why he was doing it. Patsy was his big sister, his only living relative, and he wanted all this to be over. He hadn't asked her to forgive Patsy, but of course that was what he wanted. And now Patsy was standing directly in front of her, swallowing with difficulty, her hands clasped and her fingers twisted together. You could see her knuckles whitening with the tension in her grip. "Lily, I'm sorry. I know, I can keep on saying it and it's never going to be enough, but I don't know what else I can do." Patsy's face was pale and the violet shadows beneath her eyes betrayed how little sleep she'd been getting. "I just wish there was something—" "Don't." Lily shook her head as she pushed back her chair and rose clumsily to her feet. She wrapped her arms around Patsy and hugged her hard. "It's all right, you don't have to do anything. You made a mistake, that's all. But I still love you." "Oh, God!" Choking up, Patsy let out a sob like a honking goose. "Really? Really?" Of course, really. And now Lily's eyes were brimming too. "You've been gone for 2 weeks. I've missed you so much." It was true. It was so true. She'd wanted to punish Patsy, but in doing so, she'd only succeeded in punishing herself. The two of them had both been feeling terrible. Forgiving Patsy meant all the anger could melt away, the hurt and the resentment evaporate into thin air. Tightening her hold, she whispered, "I'm sorry too." "Oh, Lily, you haven't done anything to apologise for." Well, she had, but it was nothing to do with Patsy. Lily exhaled with relief. She looked across at Dan and saw him smile. Forgiving Patsy for having done wrong meant she could forgive herself for kissing Dan. Or, more to the point, kissing him and enjoying it so much she hadn't been able to stop thinking about it ever since. Forgiving herself, it turned out, was easy. Now all she had to do was figure out how to erase the memory of that kiss from her brain. Then it was Coral's turn to embrace Patsy and say, "We've all missed you. Where have you been?" An extra chair was pulled up at the table. Sean, working behind the bar, brought over a drink for Patsy and gave her shoulder a squeeze. "Welcome back." Patsy rested her hand on his for a moment and looked up at him with gratitude. "Thanks." At the other end of the pub, Elvis had given way to Queen and everyone was now belting out Bohemian Rhapsody. Patsy shook her head. "No one's taken any notice of me being here. I thought the place would fall silent and I'd be glared at. I expected to be public enemy number 1. "They don't know," said Lily. "Really?" Patsy clutched her chest in relief. "You didn't tell them?" "No one else needed to know," said Coral. "Oh, God, thank you. Thank you so much. I was so scared. Where does everyone think I've been?" "We just said you'd gone up to London to help out in Rosa's salon because 2 of her senior stylists were off sick." Patsy nodded because this was entirely feasible. "Okay, right. And where were you really?" said Lily. "Dredging a canal in Norfolk." Double take time. "You what?" "It's one of those voluntary projects to clear up the waterways. You spend all day every day scooping gloop and weeds and rusty bikes out of a stretch of canal, and in return they put you up in a caravan and give you 3 cooked meals a day." It was like hearing Patsy announce that she'd been working in a sewer or down a mine. Lily said, "You, dredging a canal? But that's everything you hate in the world." "I know. I think that's why I did it. Couldn't afford to go anywhere nice, so I decided to do something awful instead. It seemed like the right thing to do. I suppose I wanted to punish myself." Oh, Patsy. And was it better than you thought? Did it turn out to be fun after all? No, it was revolting. Mud and rats and millions of mosquitoes, and the smell of it was just... ugh! Grasping at straws, Lily said. Were the other volunteers nice, though? God, no, they were awful too. I was sharing a mouldy two-berth caravan with an old hippie called Rain. You know how people always say nits prefer clean hair? Well, that turns out to be a big lie because Rain had a head full of nits and she hasn't washed her hair for the last 23 years. Lily tried not to shrink away. Patsy saw her flinch and they both burst out laughing. Oh, the joy of knowing all the bad stuff was behind them. Everything was completely back to normal. The connection between them was as strong as it had ever been. Where's Declan? Patsy looked at Dan. You said in your text he was staying at our place with you. I thought he'd be here tonight. He was going to be, Lily explained. But something came up this afternoon, some emergency with one of his properties, and he had to drive back to London to sort it out. It had been so lovely having him down here all week. She'd been disappointed when he had called her earlier to tell her he was leaving and wouldn't be able to join them this evening. She hoped the problem wasn't too desperate. He'd sounded a bit subdued on the phone. He's finished Weaver's Cottage, said Coral. It's amazing. She shook her head. He said he'd be quick, but we didn't think he'd be this quick. I can't believe so much has happened while I've been away. Patsy looked at Coral, then at Trent sitting beside her with his arm around her waist. Looks like you've been pretty speedy yourself. Hi, Trent Barrett. With his free hand, Trent reached across the table and enthusiastically pumped Patsy's hand. Guilty as charged. A week ago, I went away on a painting holiday and met the most amazing woman in the world. Oh, don't. Coral was laughing and blushing. Don't be modest. I'm saying it because it's true. Trent pulled her closer to him. When you know, you know. He gazed deep into Coral's eyes. And believe me, I know. Which makes me the luckiest man in the world. You definitely are, said Patsy with a warm smile. Lily wanted Coral to be happy, but she couldn't help wishing the lovey-doveyness could be dialed down a notch. She glanced sideways at Dan, who came to the rescue once more. Hang on, did Kyle's family move to Liverpool after they left here? I've been trying to remember, and for some reason I'm thinking Merseyside. He wasn't. They'd already been through this and concluded they had no idea where the family had headed. But Lily said, Oh, maybe you're right. Who's this? Said Patsy, joining in. We were just talking about him before you came in, Dan explained. Kyle, the one from school who ended up in hospital after that accident at the Leap. Oh, I remember, Patsy nodded. Kyle McLean. Poor lad. How is he now, do you know? She paused. What? Why are you all looking at me like that? Lily said, Did you know him? No, but you know his name was McLennan, said Dan. Not McLennan, McLean. Patsy corrected him. His mother came to the salon one time not long after the accident had happened. She had a trim. You remember that from 10 years ago? Dan was incredulous. And you actually remember how to spell her surname? She was a bit terrifying, Patsy confessed. She saw that I'd written it down wrong in the appointment book and she told me off. It was like being back at school, to be honest. She made me rewrite it properly and say it out loud. But it meant I didn't forget it. McLean. Dan already had his phone out. He tapped in the name and said, Bloody hell. What? Show me, show me. Lily leaned across, ready to peer at whatever he'd found. Hopefully it wasn't a news story about a poor, put-upon boy going berserk and doing away with his scary mother. She heard Dan start to laugh with relief. Thank God for that, he murmured, then turned his phone so she could see the screen too. And there was a photo of Kyle McLean, older now, of course, but still instantly recognisable, wearing a racing helmet and mud-splattered jockey's silks, and with his arms held joyously aloft as he celebrated victory in the winner's enclosure at Ascot. He's a jump jockey, Lily marvelled as Dan scrolled on down. He's not in a wheelchair. Not at the moment, Dan said dryly. Listen to this. He expanded the text and began to read aloud. In the last decade, spectacular wins have been interspersed with equally dramatic injuries. In addition to fractured femurs, arms and collarbones, a horse landed on McLean last year, leaving him with serious internal injuries and a fractured skull. He recovered well, however, and was back racing within months. More happily, earlier this year he and his wife welcomed the arrival of their 5th child. All those injuries, Lily marvelled. And 5 kids. Basically, Kyle doesn't hang around. If we'd known anything about horse racing, we'd have heard of him, said Lily. Then she jumped as beneath the table and out of sight of the others, Dan gave her hand a squeeze. He was only doing it to signal his relief that Kyle was okay, but it gave her a jolt all the same. Worse, it made her want to kiss him. Oh, help. Looks like he's done all right for himself, said Patsy. 5 children, too. When his mother was telling me about him, she was absolutely convinced he was gay. He's won loads of races. Lily was still reading the information on Dan's phone screen. Huh, remember how Gail was boasting at the barbecue about how she was friends with Frankie Dettori? Next time she's down, we can boast back about knowing Kyle McLinen. Except she's not going to be back down here. Dan stopped abruptly. Okay, I wasn't supposed to say that. What? Lily was puzzled. Why not? What's happened? Dan hesitated, then shrugged and said, Oh, well, it's not like it was a proper secret. It wasn't exactly reassuring to discover he wasn't that great at keeping any kind of secret, proper or otherwise. As if the memory of their supposedly secret kiss wasn't already preying on her mind enough. Anyway, never mind about that now. Dan, what's going on? Declan only didn't mention it because he thought you had enough on your plate, what with the stuff with Keir happening and Patsy disappearing. But he told me last week, said Dan. It's all over between him and Gail. We won't be seeing her again. Wow! Lily boggled. Do we know why? Although she had to say, they'd spent the last week with Declan, and if he was heartbroken, he'd been disguising it like a champion. Until today, when he'd had to rush back to London, if anything, she'd have said he seemed even more cheerful than usual. Dan said, It was his decision, there's no one else involved. He just realised things weren't right. Well, I bet Gail got the shock of her life. Lily could just picture her reaction. She doesn't seem like the kind of person who'd expect to be finished with. No one goes through life expecting to be finished with, said Dan. Patsy said, I do. She pulled her face. And I'm always right. We're going to find you someone nice. Lily had already decided while they'd been hugging each other that this was going to be her new resolution. Turning to Coral to back her up, she said, Aren't we? Between us we'll make it happen. Because Patsy may have made mistakes in the past, but she did deserve to be happy. Coral blinked. Sorry, what was that? I missed it. She's miles away. Trent laughed, and with his arm wrapped around her shoulders, gave Coral another of his over-enthusiastic hugs. Wakey, wakey, pay attention, honey bun. You were daydreaming about our last night in Grimo, weren't you? Ew, again. But Coral was looking embarrassed, smiling apologetically and shifting in her seat. Plus Trent was looking smug. So maybe he'd been right. Okay, can I just say I wasn't being nosy? Patsy blurted the words out as Dan made his way back into the living room much later that night. About what? Dan frowned as he put down the plate of cheese on toast he'd just made in the kitchen. Why on earth was Patsy looking at him like that? And then he saw that she was pointing to his laptop, lying open on the coffee table between them. All I did was glance at the screen as I was reaching for the TV remote. By the time I realised it was your bank statement, it was too late. I'd already seen his name. Whose name? But Dan had already figured it out, and Patsy knew that he knew. She gave him a big sister head tilt. Come on, you're many things, but you're not stupid. Apart from his unbelievably stupid love for Lily. Except Patsy still didn't know about that, thank God. She was now pointing to her transaction on the screen. There. On Sunday the 29th of June, you made an online payment of £3,000. She paused, then said evenly, To Keir Bourne. Fuck. And the way she'd emphasised the amount made it sound like a lot. Okay, it was a lot, but it had seemed like a good idea at the time. Dan exhaled. I thought Lily had been through enough. Patsy was looking at him as if she knew better. Just Lily? Okay, and you too, he admitted. Both of you. That's why there was no story that following Sunday. No more awful, embarrassing details. Dan nodded. You paid him off. This was true, and he knew it had been a bad thing to do, like paying a ransom to kidnappers. But he'd wanted it to be over, had wanted Kia Bourne to go away, leave them alone, and not inflict yet more pain on those whose lives he'd messed up. Bourne had been due another £1,000 from the newspaper for the follow-up piece. When Dan had offered him $2,000 to keep quiet, he had hesitated, torn but visibly tempted. $3,000 had sealed the deal. Right there and then in the kitchen at Goldstone House, Dan had keyed the necessary bank details into his phone and transferred the money into Kia Bourne's account. His parting shot had been, and if you're ever tempted to ask for more or renege on this agreement, think again, because I know people who'd be only too happy to bring you to your senses, if you know what I mean. Needless to say, he didn't know anyone, but had uttered the words with a hopefully convincing note of threatening menace. Kia Bourne had nodded and appeared to believe him anyway. He hadn't been able to scuttle away fast enough like the cockroach he was. Well, it was a crazy thing to do. Patsy was looking emotional. But thank you. So much. Don't worry about it. Let's not mention this to Lily, okay? Okay. Patsy broke into a wobbly smile, then jumped up and hugged him. You're not a bad brother, you know. I know. It's good to be home. I'm glad you're back too. Patsy wiped her eyes and said hopefully, Can I have some of your cheese on toast? Okay, now you're really pushing your luck, said Dan. Chapter 45. It was Patsy's birthday. Happy birthday to me, Patsy sang quietly in her head. Not out loud, that would be embarrassing, and people would stare. This morning she'd gone into work and there'd been carver and cake. People had popped in and out to wish her many happy returns and bring her flowers. Sean and Will had given her the most beautiful Vivienne Westwood red leather purse. Lily and Coral had bought her a stunning Venetian mirror, and Dan's present had been 2 tickets to see Beyoncé at London's O2 Arena and spend the night in a glitzy 4-star hotel in Canary Wharf. She loved her friends and family so much. She also knew that it was more than she deserved. Then at lunch, Kath from Dering's farm had come into the salon and told them about her grandson, ill in hospital in Baltimore and desperately in need of funds to pay for life-saving surgery. Poor Kath had been in a state. She hated to ask, but they were raising money via an eBay charity auction, and if anyone had anything at all they could donate to the cause, her family would be so grateful. Patsy had slipped home, explained the situation to Dan, and returned to the salon with the tickets for the Beyoncé and hotel stay package. Kath had been overwhelmed, but Patsy had insisted.
End of CD 9. CD 10.
Much as she'd always longed to see Beyoncé performing live, giving her birthday present to a worthy cause made her feel better and went some way towards assuaging her continuing guilt. The excellent news was that since Kath's son had put the tickets up on the fundraising page this afternoon, bidding had already reached £550, and Patsy knew she'd done a good thing. The time was now 5 to 8, and her date was due to arrive at any minute. She tried hard not to wonder if doing a good thing might mean things would go well this evening in a karmic kind of way, but that wasn't why she'd done it. She hadn't even meant to come out on any more internet dates. Having done a lot of serious thinking in the past few weeks, Patsy had made up her mind to alter her life and stop being so desperate. From now on, she was going to sort herself out, live life on her own terms, and knock the neediness on the head. She'd also thanked Sean and Will for their kind suggestion, but explained to them she wouldn't be taking them up on the offer. She wanted a baby, but also important was being able to share it with someone she was truly in love with. And if she were destined to never meet the right man and remain childless, well, so what? It was what happened to thousands of women, and if they could cope with it, then so could she. It wasn't the end of the world. Sean and Will had been brilliant, thank goodness. They'd agreed that this was the right decision for her. And when she'd finished apologising for having dashed their hopes, they told her it didn't matter a bit, and that now they knew for sure that her family was what they wanted, there were plenty of other avenues to explore. For now, though, as far as she herself was concerned, Patsy had taken the decision to just stop thinking about it. What would be, would be. The door to the wine bar swung open and Patsy's stomach did its habitual anxious lurch. But it wasn't him. It was two blonde girls in skin-tight dresses and strappy heels. His name was Rick. He was 37 and an architect, and he lived right here in Cheltenham. During her fortnight away from home, she hadn't accessed the dating site once. Having made the decision to give it up, it wasn't until after her return to Stanton Langley that she'd seen Rick's messages. Several of them, but not in a stalky or scary way. He'd simply wondered why she hadn't replied to his emails. Patsy had emailed him back to explain, and he'd said, well, wasn't that a shame? He'd missed his chance. Then he'd asked if she wouldn't consider making an exception just this once, and they'd fallen into a routine of exchanging jokey messages pretty much every day. Finally, she'd succumbed because he'd sounded funny and genuine. And when he had set the date for this evening, she hadn't told him it was her birthday. It wasn't important, he didn't need to know. Maybe if tonight went well and they saw each other again and again, she would tell him the truth about the day of the first date, and together they'd laugh about it. Okay, getting way ahead of herself, as usual. Let's face it, the chances were that Rick would turn out to have all sorts of annoying traits, and she'd be back home by 10 o'clock all ready to start the rest of her new and improved man-free life. The door swung open at 8 o'clock on the dot, and a middle-aged couple came into the wine bar. At 3 minutes past, a man arrived to collect his wife, who'd been having a drink with friends from work. At 10 past, the door opened once more to admit another couple, and this time every muscle in Patsy's body stiffened in horror. The woman was tall and elegant, with sleek dark hair and a prominent Roman nose that suited her high cheekboned face. The man was Derek. Derek, he of the turquoise lycra leggings and tandem obsession, whom she had last seen disappearing down the road alone on his bicycle built for two. Except this evening he was wearing normal clothes. Oh God, please don't let him spot me. But fate, oh God, wasn't that magnanimous. As Patsy attempted to study the wine menu at such close range that it was making her eyes cross, Derek stopped dead in his tracks. Well, look who it is. Hello, Patsy, what are you doing here? Waiting for another blind date? He glanced at the watch on his bony wrist and feigned concern. Oh dear, was he meant to be here by 8? Not looking good, is it? I do hope he isn't going to embarrass you by not turning up. Such a loud, carrying voice. Other people in the bar were nudging each other and whispering. Some were giving her sympathetic smiles, but others were clearly finding it hilarious. And the worst thing was, Patsy knew she absolutely deserved it. I hope so too. She forced herself to remain outwardly composed. Hello, Derek, you're looking well. Sorry about our date. No problem, your loss. He slid his arm possessively around his companion's waist. I'm glad you jumped off my tandem. If that hadn't happened, I wouldn't have met Andrea, would I? She loves cycling. We're a perfect match. That's great, I'm happy for you, said Patsy. It was true, but she was also mortified for herself. Thank you. We reap what we sow. Maybe I deserve to meet someone nice, and you didn't. Definitely, Patsy nodded. I think you could be right. Come on. Andrea gave Derek a nudge. Let's go through to the other bar, shall we? She turned back to Patsy. Can I just say, you really missed a trick there, but I'm glad you did. He's 1 in a million, and he's all mine. Let's leave her to her date. Derek was smug as he cast another ostentatious glance at his watch and pulled a face. Oh dear. That is, if he turns up. They made their way through to the conservatory bar at the back of the building, leaving Patsy wreathed in awkwardness. It was like wearing the opposite of an invisibility cloak. Derek and Andrea might have disappeared, but the 30 or 40 other customers were still here, casting sly glances in her direction and thinking she deserved to be stood up. Because Derek was actually looking perfectly normal this evening, what with his trendy, choppy haircut, nice shirt and well-fitting jeans. It was hugely tempting to get to her feet and announce, Look, he turned up for our first date wearing turquoise lycra leggings, okay? And a cycling helmet. But she couldn't. She just had to sit there and sweat it out. And it was almost 8:15 now. Why wasn't Rick here yet? Time crawled by in that special slow-motion way it had a habit of slipping into when you were most desperate for it to move faster. The doors swung open to admit several more customers, none of them Rick. Quarter past became 20 past, and Patsy experienced the sinking feeling of rejection. 5 more minutes, then she'd leave. Maybe 3 more. She was surrounded by people murmuring to each other, smirking at the non-arrival of her date. If she were to walk out now, they'd all burst out laughing and start discussing her utter humiliation and comeuppance. That would be fun for them, wouldn't it? Okay, 1 more minute, then she was off. There'd been no text messages from Rick and no response to the one she'd sent him 8 minutes ago. Enough was enough. Even the bar staff were covertly watching her now, waiting to see what she'd do next. In fact, it was definitely time to... "Excuse me, are you Patsy?" Patsy swiveled round so fast she almost cricked her neck. But it wasn't him. She'd seen several photos of Rick, and he was tall and thin, with short dark hair and a scar through his left eyebrow. "I'm Patsy." This one was medium height and broad-shouldered, with tousled fair hair and blonde stubble on his cleft chin. He was wearing a check shirt and unfortunate burgundy trousers. "Is this about Rick?" Every eye in the wine bar was upon them. No one was even bothering to pretend not to be eavesdropping. Yes." The late arrival looked awkward. Okay, having him hover in front of her table like this was just drawing even more attention. Patsy pointed and said, "Sit down. Is he not coming?" Although she already knew the answer. He cautiously sat opposite her as if suspecting the chair seat was scattered with upturned drawing pins. "I'm sorry. No, he isn't." Chapter 46. "Is it because he's dead?" A shake of the head. "No." "Right. Is he trapped at the foot of a deep ravine with severe injuries and no way of climbing out?" "No." "That's a real shame," said Patsy. "You might like to warn him that you'd do well to avoid going near the edges of any deep ravines for the next few weeks." Just to give Rick the benefit of the doubt, she said, "Okay, is he ill?" Another weary headshake. "He isn't ill. He's just a prize dick." Surprise, surprise. "And you're... what, his best friend, his brother?" Another prize dick. "Neither. I hardly know him. But he spent the whole afternoon drinking at the cricket club. His friends kept reminding him he had a date this evening, but he said he couldn't be bothered going. And nobody else seemed to care. They were just laughing and making jokes about it. To be honest, that's what they're like. But I thought it couldn't be much fun for you sitting here on your own wondering what was going on, so I asked him where the two of you were meant to be meeting up." "Well, that was decent of you." Unlike bloody Rick. "Sorry, I don't know your name, but thanks anyway." "Bastard! I mean him, not you." "I'm Oliver." "Right, Patsy. Oh, you already knew that. Sorry again." Patsy exhaled and shook her head, looking down at her hands in order to avoid glancing around the room. "Is everyone staring at me?" "No, of course not." Pause. "Okay, a bit." "Oh God, are you going to cry?" "Definitely not." "Well, that's good." He sounded relieved. "So, I just came to let you know." Poor Oliver, he couldn't wait to get out of here. Patsy nodded. "Of course, thanks again, I appreciate it. Very kind of..." Oh shit, here came Derek and Andrea making their way back out. Just as Oliver began to get to his feet, Patsy grabbed his hand and hissed, "Sit!" like he was a really naughty dog. Startled into obedience, Oliver sat back on his chair a split second before Derek looked over and said, "Well, how about that then? Her date finally turned up. Better late than never, eh?" Thinking fast, Patsy said, "There was an accident on Lansdowne Road." "Between a minibus and a Vauxhall Corsa. I was lucky she was still here waiting for me." Oliver smiled across at Patsy. "Sorry again, I hate being late." "Well, keep an eye on her," said Derek. "And if you give her a lift home later, mind she doesn't jump out of the car window when you're not looking." Patsy said, "Don't worry, I won't be doing that." When the door had closed behind Derek and Andrea, Oliver said, "How was that? Did I do okay?" "More than okay. You were very good." He broke into a grin. "What was that about the car window?" Patsy hesitated, then realised she might as well tell him. She had no more dignity left to lose. "He was another internet date. I wasn't expecting him to turn up on a tandem. He wouldn't stop talking about bikes, so I jumped off the back and let him cycle off without noticing I'd gone. Oliver burst out laughing. Ha! Brilliant, good for you. Maybe tonight was my payback. Patsy was rueful, although Rick had evidently been no great loss. Then she noticed the way Oliver was looking at her. What? I kept getting this feeling I'd seen you somewhere before, but I couldn't place you. Except now you've mentioned the internet dates, I think I've got it. He stopped, thought for a moment, then wagged an index finger in the air. Okay, did you go on a date a few weeks ago with a guy who interrupted every single thing you tried to say? Patsy sat back, stunned. You mean James? Are you serious? Do you know him too? I don't know him at all. I was there. You were having dinner at the Green Gage in Nailsworth, right? We were at the next table. Patsy covered her mouth. She'd been aware of the couple seated a few feet away, but hadn't paid them any attention. She shook her head. It's my mission in life to provide entertainment for eavesdroppers. Sorry, we couldn't help it. Every time you opened your mouth to say something, he just talked right over you. About his ex-wife, mostly. He was a nightmare, Patsy sighed. I can't believe you were there. Thank goodness your brother had that accident, so you had to rush off. Oliver's mouth twitched. Patsy nodded. It was good timing. He indicated her phone on the table. Have you arranged for someone to call you again this evening? Well, I have, but I'll be back home before it happens. Look, thanks again for coming to tell me about Rick. She picked up her handbag and rummaged for her car keys. Okay, time to make a move. Did you drive here, or can I offer you a lift? Oliver glanced at her almost empty glass of orange juice. Or, I don't have to leave. We could stay here and have a drink, if you wanted to, that is. I mean, I'm in no hurry, although maybe you are. God, sorry, as if you haven't had a bad enough start to the evening. Where's your wife? Patsy's tone was cool. Or your girlfriend? The one you were with at the restaurant the other week? He nodded slowly. Oh, her. Were we holding hands? Snuggling up together? Kissing? I didn't really notice, I don't think so. Well, thank goodness for that. Oliver pulled a face. Because I don't have a wife or a girlfriend. That was Nadine, he said. She's my sister. For the next hour, the conversation zigzagged in all directions. When he asked about her family, Patsy found herself telling him about Dan's career as a pilot and his lifelong love of flying. You see, that's a cool thing to do. Guess what form of transport my younger brother's obsessed with? Okay, you won't guess, so I'll tell you. Oliver shook his head in despair. Steam trains. He can't get enough of them. Seriously, he's even dragged me along with him to a couple of shows. Ding went Patsy's brain, sparked by the memory of Tess in the salon offering to have a word with her husband about getting her fixed up with one of his fellow steam train enthusiasts. She smiled inwardly at her mental image of the men with their flat caps and untrimmed beards. Okay, probably best not to relate that tale to Oliver. But 20 minutes later, when he happened to mention that one of his friends from work lived in Chipping Norton, Patsy said, Oh, I love that place. The little theatre just off the high street is so brilliant. My friend Finola lives there too, and we always go along to their Christmas pantos. Finola, Oliver said. Married to Will. Will is the friend I work with. They had this amazing barbecue the other week. It was the best night ever. I've never laughed so much in my life. The little hairs had risen on the back of Patsy's neck. That had been the evening she'd had her disastrous date in the Star with penny-pinching Marcus. And she'd dithered about whether or not to bother driving over to Chipping Norton afterwards, but had ended up deciding against it. Whereas if she had gone along, she would have met Oliver. I was invited to Finola and Will's barbecue too, she said. You weren't there, though. Oliver shook his head. If you had been, I'd have definitely noticed you. She'd even wondered if it could have turned out to be one of those potentially life-changing sliding doors moments. How spooky was that? She smiled and shrugged. You're right, I didn't go. At 11 o'clock, the manager of the bar called last orders, just as Oliver was telling Patsy the story of how he'd lost his keys last year on Christmas Eve. And it had just gone midnight, so of course it cost a fortune to call out a locksmith. He laughed at the memory. Not the best start to Christmas, or to my birthday. Your birthday's on Christmas Day? Oh, wow, Patsy marvelled. That must be weird. Is it weird? Oliver shrugged easily. I'm kind of used to it now. When's yours? July? Ah, you were a summer baby. When in July? Whoops, bit embarrassing. Second half? Oliver beamed. Same as my sister. What date? The 24th? So when you and your sister were young, did she lord it over you because... Hang on, Oliver interrupted. The 24th? Patsy nodded and felt herself reddening. Of July? She nodded again. But that's today, said Oliver. I know. She felt inexplicably ashamed. Oh, Patsy. He gazed into her eyes. I'm sorry. You should have said. Doesn't matter. She broke into a smile. There might have been a bit of a dodgy dip in the middle, but the rest of it's been great. At that moment, the manager clanged the bell and called out, Time now at the bar. Wait. Oliver jumped to his feet and rushed over. Evidently having sweet talk to the manager, he returned triumphantly bearing 2 glasses and 1 mini bottle of Prosecco. Here we go. Better late than never. He divided the sparkling wine between them. Cheers. Happy birthday. Their glasses clinked together. Patsy said, Thank you. Rick missed a trick. Oliver's eyes glinted with mischief. The dick. I'm glad he did, said Patsy. Ooh, daring. Oliver looked pleased. I'm glad too. By 11:30, the staff were busy tidying up and it was time to leave the almost empty bar. When Oliver excused himself to visit the men's loos, Patsy found herself approached by the female half of the only other remaining customers. In her 50s and well-dressed, she teetered over on high heels. Hello. Sorry, I'm a wee bit tipsy, but can I just say we've been here all evening and we heard what happened. This one seems really nice, though. I know looks-wise he's no Ryan Reynolds, but you can't have everything, can you? I mean, not saying he's ugly, it's just a bit ordinary. But that's okay. And you can always smarten him up, can't you? The important thing is that he sounds like a really nice guy and the two of you are getting on together so well. He's behind you, said Patsy. I am. Oliver, back from the loo, nodded in sympathy. The woman's husband reached for his wife's hand. Sorry, is she burbling again? Once she starts, she can't stop. Just ignore her, she doesn't mean any harm. It's fine, said Oliver. I agree with everything she says. Had there ever been such an amazing, unexpected evening? Patsy caught his eye and felt something inside her click into place, like the very last piece of a jigsaw puzzle. She smiled and said, So do I. Chapter 47. Lily had delivered a Victorian marble fireplace and a stone bird bath to a customer in Stow-on-the-Wold. Arriving back in Stanton Langley at 6 o'clock, she saw Eddie and Dan sitting together at one of the tables outside the Star. Her heart leapt at the sight of them as their heads turned in her direction. She parked the van and jumped out, and Dan said, I leave you two to your reunion, bye. It was still a novelty to see him walking normally, without a limp or using the aluminium crutch for support. For a couple of seconds, Lily watched him heading for the car he was now able to drive again. Next week, he had his appointment with the aviation medical examiner and an hours-long session booked on the simulator to establish his proficiency in physical fitness before he could return to work. Then Eddie said, Hey, come here, you've no idea how much I've missed you, and drew her towards him for a kiss. Typically, it was at this precise moment that 3 teenage boys on bicycles pedalled past, emitting ear-piercing wolf whistles along with a cry of, Go on, give her one! It was hard to kiss romantically when you were snorting with laughter. Sorry, said Lily, bloody hecklers. I don't believe it. Staring after them, Eddie said, The kid on the left? That's the one I gave all those signed photos to, little shit. It was Tim, or Tom. younger brother of Jess, the waitress at the Valentine. Luckily, Eddie was amused rather than outraged. Lily said, "That was my fault. He did sell them on eBay." "I didn't doubt it for a minute." Eddie smiled down at her, his hands resting on her bare shoulders. "Anyway, I really have missed you." "I've missed you too. How's it going with the screenplay?" She knew the struggle he'd been having with it for the last couple of weeks. "Don't ask. The harder I try, the more the words refuse to come out and the worse it gets. Come on, let's go." He was leading her towards his car now, parked just down the street. "Where are you taking me?" said Lily as he accelerated away from the curb. "Shh, it's a surprise." She assumed he'd booked a room at the Valentine, but before they reached the hotel, he pulled up outside Weaver's cottage. He pointed to the "To Let" sign planted in the front garden. "You know, I really thought Declan might decide to keep it for himself." "I wondered that too," said Lily. "He put so much effort into it. Still, I suppose that's his job. Anyway, he came down for a flying visit yesterday to let me know he's decided to rent it out. He couldn't stay, though. He's snowed under with work at the moment." "How is he, well?" Lily hesitated. "I think so." Eddie said, "Do you think he misses Gail?" "He hasn't seemed very happy recently." Lily paused, then nodded. "I think maybe he does miss her a lot." "Well, you never know. Maybe they'll get back together. But in the meantime, there's a cottage sitting empty." Eddie swung open the driver's door of the car. "Want to show me round?" "It's locked. I don't have a key." Next to her, Eddie delved into his jeans pocket and held up a key with a label attached. "That's okay, I do." There was a playful look in his eye that for the life of her Lily couldn't figure out. What on earth was he suggesting? Because if this was his idea of a fun game, that they could sneak into an empty cottage and have wild reunion sex in there, well, there was absolutely no way she would go along with such a, "Oh God, are you thinking what I think you're thinking?" She must have been looking as horrified as she felt because Eddie said, "Please don't think it. That would be so weird. Listen, I saw the "To Let" sign up outside when I arrived back this afternoon and asked Dan about it. He told me what was going on. And I called into the estate agents just before they closed. They trusted me with the key, what with me being a movie star and all." He smiled, reaching across for Lily's hand. "How would you feel if I took a year's lease out on this place, Does that sound like a pretty good plan to you?" Lily swallowed and wondered if her heart was visibly hammering against her ribcage. It sounded as if it should be a brilliant plan. In theory. Oh, help, this was awkward. She was doing her best to look surprised and delighted, but the muscles in her face felt as if they'd forgotten how to do it. And meanwhile, the uncomfortable silence was lengthening and Eddie was watching her, reading her face like a book. He might be many things, but he wasn't stupid. "Well, there we have it. Looks like I have my answer." He carefully slid the key back into the pocket of his jeans. "Sorry," said Lily. Oh, God, was it worse being rejected when you were a famous film star? And what if she was making the most terrible mistake? Because he was famous, he was a film star, and millions of females would think she'd completely lost her mind. How many ordinary girls turn down an opportunity like this? "It's okay, I had my suspicions. I kind of did it to see if I was right." Eddie paused, then added wryly, "And I was." "You're fantastic," said Lily. "It's not you, it's definitely me. I must be mad." He half smiled. "Goes without saying." "What made you have your suspicions?" "The other week when I signed off that text with 'Love you,' it was a genuine mistake and I had to call you and let you know that. I thought you'd be disappointed but trying your best to hide it. You weren't, though." He was watching her intently. Quite the opposite, in fact. You were relieved. This was true. Lily recalled the moment of alarm when she'd first seen the words, followed by the exquisite feeling of let-off-the-hookness when he'd called to apologise and explain. She said, "I could have been pretending to be relieved." "You weren't, though." "No." "Oh, well, at least now we know." "But I do really like you." Eddie dipped his head. "Thanks. I like you too. Slightly more than you like me, but that's okay." His tone was rueful. "My ego can probably handle it." "What with all the other millions of girls out there, jumping up and down and screaming, 'Pick me, pick me!'" "Well, quite. I dare say I'll recover." but it's going to be a struggle to find someone else like you. I know you don't think you're special," Eddie went on. "But you actually are. You're funny and brave and principled and honest, and I really hope we can stay friends." Now he was making her feel terrible. In order to hide her guilty face, Lily leaned across and gave him a hug. Against the soft cotton of his expensive pale blue shirt, she breathed in the scent of him and knew it would stay with her for the rest of her life. Her voice muffled, she said, "I hope so too." They stayed like that for a few seconds more. Finally, realizing there was another confession she had to make, Lily pulled back and shook her hair out of her eyes. "Okay, there's something I need to tell you. And this is your fault because I wasn't going to, but you just called me principled and honest, so now I have to say it." "Sounds intriguing." Eddie looked amused. "What is it? Have you been unfaithful to me?" He was saying it as a joke, because it was the least likely option he could think of. Feeling sick, but knowing she had to go ahead, Lily nodded. "Yes." "What?" That made him sit up. "Are you serious?" Hastily, she added, "Not sex." "Oh, right." His shoulders relaxed. "So, what kind of unfaithful then?" "It was a kiss. A proper kiss. That was all, but it definitely felt like being unfaithful." She knew she had to explain. "I was talking to a friend about the situation with Patsy. They asked me if I'd ever done anything really bad that had made me feel terrible and ashamed of myself. And I couldn't think of anything bad enough. So they thought I should do something. And, well, that's what it was." "Right. So did it work?" Lily nodded, her mouth dry. "Oh, yes, it did." "You really felt terrible?" Eddie prompted. "Yes." Oh, God, and now her brain was remembering it all over again. "But it made you realize how Patsy had been feeling, and that's how you were able to forgive her?" Lily nodded again. Eddie said thoughtfully, "I did wonder." "Well, anyway, that's it. That was what happened. So now you know, and I'm sorry." Another look, followed by a crooked smile. Then Eddie drew her towards him and gave her a kiss on the forehead. "No problem. Very honest of you. Look, I'm going to drop you home now and head back to London, but I meant it about us staying friends." As he started the car again, he gave her arm a squeeze. "Good." Glad he didn't hate her, Lily added. "And thanks." Back at Goldstone House, she gave him one last hug. 50 years from now, when you are up on stage collecting your Oscar for Lifetime Achievement, I'll be the annoying old woman in the nursing home boasting to everyone that one magical summer we had an affair. And nobody will believe me, which will be so annoying." "If that happens, I'll come and visit you," said Eddie. "Then they'll believe it." "I'll hold you to that. Can you bring your Oscar with you?" "Of course. And it could have lasted longer than one summer. Your decision, remember, not mine." Lily shrugged and smiled. Oh, well. She'd expected him to ask more questions, but he hadn't, which was probably a good thing. "I'll tell you something, though," Eddie said as he climbed out of the car. "It must have been one hell of a kiss." Chapter 48. It wasn't right. Coral had tried so hard to make it work, but it just wasn't happening. Tiny, niggling problems, building up over the last few weeks, had become impossible to ignore. In fact, you could almost say they'd been multiplying like bacteria. She stifled a burst of laughter and turned away so Trent wouldn't see. Finding the situation funny really wasn't appropriate under the circumstances. Maybe she was hysterical with relief at having realised that it was okay, she could end this relationship, it was allowed. Oh, but how many couples could lay the blame for their breakup on a single speck of mould on a sandwich? "What are you doing?" Trent's voice was laced with suspicion. "Turn around and look at me. Are you laughing?" Oh dear, he'd seen her shoulders shaking. The game was up. "You are laughing," he announced. "Because I can't believe you're making this much fuss about a sandwich." They'd constructed them earlier this morning because he'd announced that they were going for an 8-mile walk along the Cotswold Way and would need to take supplies with them. When Coral had suggested stopping at a lovely pub for something to eat and drink, Trent had replied, "No, let's not do that. They just rip people off. We'll take our own." but the loaf of bread in his kitchen evidently hadn't been the freshest. By the time they'd stopped for lunch, the heat of the day had got to it, and Trent had stared in horror at the blue dot on the outside of his cheese and pickle sandwich. "Oh, God, I don't believe it. What am I going to do now?" It had taken Coral a few seconds to realise he wasn't joking. Calmly, she had reached across, pinched together her thumb and forefinger, and removed the blue dot. "There you go, sorted." Which had caused Trent to look at her as if she'd just murdered a kitten. "You can't do that." "I just did. What's wrong?" "You seriously expect me to eat that sandwich now?" Was he 3 years old? Was this one of those hidden camera TV shows? To humour him, Coral said, "You don't have to. Here, I'll have that one and you can have mine." "You'd eat a mouldy sandwich?" "It isn't a mouldy sandwich. I've taken the mould off. But even if I hadn't, it wouldn't hurt me. It isn't a decomposing rat." She gave him her own sandwich, and Trent turned it over, his brow furrowed with suspicion. If he'd had a magnifying glass, he would have used it. Finally, he pointed, said, "This one's got it too," and threw it to the ground in disgust. That was when the giggles had begun to rise up, and Coral had had to turn away. If ever Trent was invited to be a contestant on I'm a Celebrity, Get Me Out of Here, he should probably say no. "Antonia would never have laughed at me." His tone was accusing. "She wouldn't have eaten a mouldy sandwich either." This was another less than endearing habit that had begun to grate. He'd taken to bringing his late wife more and more often into conversation, which was fine, of course it was, apart from the fact that he invariably held Antonia up as the pinnacle of perfection to whom all others needed to aspire. Antonia had never been given a parking fine. She'd loved listening to his favourite jazz albums. She'd always polished her shoes before leaving the house. She'd never forgotten to put the oven timer on and burnt the casserole. And she'd never, ever folded over the corner of a page to keep her place in a book. Only complete heathens did that. And now it was as if a ticker tape was running through Coral's brain, emblazoned with all the other things she found frustrating about Trent. The baby voice he put on when he wanted her to make him a cup of tea. The way he tried to imitate the accents of people on TV, all the way through whichever programme they happened to be watching. His predilection for using unfunny catchphrases over and over and thinking they were hilarious every time. Not to mention his habit of calling her Pumpkin. Since she was hungry, Coral valiantly controlled her mirth and ate the sandwich. Trent said, "That is repulsive. You're making me feel sick watching you." "You don't have to watch me." She swallowed the last mouthful. The sandwich hadn't been that great anyway. Instead of butter, Trent only kept cheap margarine in his fridge. "Look, I don't think we're right for each other, do you?" "Not really." His expression changed to one of alarm. "But Pumpkin!" "We had a holiday romance and it was fun," said Coral, "and I'm grateful to you for making me realise I could feel normal again. But I think we've gone as far as we can go." "Pumpkin!" "Please don't call me Pumpkin." Coral shook her head. "I don't like it." Trent looked confused. "But Antonia always liked it when I called her that." "Oh, God. I'm not Antonia, though. We're different people." "You certainly are. She loved being called Pumpkin. And I loved it when she called me Mr. Snuggles. I asked you to call me that," said Trent, aggrieved. "But you haven't done it once." "Oh." Just the thought of saying it made her shudder. Coral said, "I'm not really a nicknamey sort of person." Trent looked at her, a picture of disappointment. "Antonia was." Let's face it, they were both disappointed. He'd thought he'd found someone capable of getting him over the loss of his beloved wife. And it had been like that for her too. Poor Nick. She hadn't forgotten him. But she'd definitely been clinging to the hope that a relationship with Trent would help her over her embarrassing crush on Declan. Except that hadn't happened. The embarrassing crush hadn't gone away. Anyway, that was all completely irrelevant. Coral gave herself a mental shake. The lettings agent was still looking for long-term tenants for Weaver's Cottage, and Declan was back in London. He hadn't been down to Stanton Langley for weeks. Not only was he out of the picture, he'd never been in the picture in the first place. All she had to deal with at the moment was this failed relationship. Still, no relationship was better than being stuck in one that wasn't right, and she definitely wouldn't miss having to endure that awful jazz music Trent loved to listen to. See? There was always a bright side. "So, that's it then," he said. "Over." "I think so," said Coral. "Don't you?" She knew so, but it seemed only fair to be polite. He grimaced. "Fine. I just hope eating that sandwich doesn't make you ill." Coral smiled. "If you're honest, you're probably hoping it will, so you can say you told me so." He gave her another of those long, unamused looks of his. "You're not perfect, you know, in case you think you are." Oh goodness, retaliation for having been laughed at. So much for being polite. Coral said, "I don't think I'm perfect." "My Antonia used to go to a salon for a full professional manicure every week. Her nails were always immaculate." Trent's lip curled with derision as he pointed to her hands. "Yours are a disgrace." Chapter 49. For Declan, the last 7 days had been like dog years. Time had never passed so slowly. Every hour had felt like a week. It had begun as a normal phone conversation with Lily as he was making his way on foot to an appointment on Pall Mall. They'd been discussing a TV espionage series they were both currently enthralled by, chatting about what he'd been up to in London and catching up with everything that had been going on in Stanton Langley. Then Lily had added, "Oh, and it's all over between Coral and Trent. Turns out he wasn't the one for her after all." Just 2 casual sentences, but they'd had the power to stop Declan dead in his tracks as he crossed Trafalgar Square, causing 2 tourists to cannon into the back of him and a flock of startled pigeons to rise into the air. Somehow he had got through the rest of the telephone conversation without Lily thinking he'd lost his mind. Hopefully he'd sounded more or less normal. In the real world, for the next couple of days, he'd managed to carry on working, attending meetings, making appointments and arranging for all necessary tasks to be carried out. But inside his head he felt like a teenage boy, fizzing with excitement and anticipation and willing time to pass because there obviously needed to be a break between Coral finishing with one man and finding herself on the receiving end of a declaration of love from another. Furthermore, the break needed to be long enough not to rush and possibly overwhelm her, but not so long that she had time to meet someone else. No way was he going to risk letting that happen again. The original plan had been to leave it for a fortnight, but Declan had soon discovered he couldn't wait that long. Yesterday he'd cancelled his meetings for today and called Lily to let her know he was on his way down. "Oh, brilliant!" Lily had been delighted. "We haven't seen you for weeks. I've missed you." "I've missed you too." "All of you," he'd added in his head. And now yesterday was today and he was almost there. The last time had gone horribly wrong. Declan knew he had to be prepared for it to happen again. But he also knew he had to try, give it his best shot, find out once and for all if Gail's instincts had been right. And if it turned out she'd been wrong all along, well then, at least he would know. He'd have his final answer. "Yay, you're here! Excellent timing!" Lily greeted him with enthusiasm. "Give me 5 minutes to finish closing up, then we'll have a drink. I sold that church pulpit this afternoon, by the way. Oh, and this fantastic old lady turned up and bought the red velvet coffin. She said she'd love to be buried in it because it looks so cosy." "That's great. Is Coral in the house?" Like a master spy, Declan had already noticed there was no sign of her out here in the yard or in the office. "I'll go on over and say hello." "Oh, she isn't here." Lily's words caused his stomach to tighten and the words "not again" to reverberate through his brain. "She said we'd run out of balsamic vinegar and chocolate biscuits, so she's gone off to do a supermarket shop." He breathed again. The big out-of-town supermarket was 6 or 7 miles away on the Cheltenham Road. All of a sudden, Declan couldn't bear to wait a minute longer. He had to see Coral as soon as possible. "Damn, I meant to stop after and grab some champagne. Completely forgot. I'll go and pick some up now." "Hello? No need." Lily pulled her phone out of her pocket. "I can just give Coral a call and she can get it for you while she's there." No, 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 no. Declan's mind was made up, and he was going to do it if it killed him. "There's something else I need to buy." He saw the confusion in Lily's eyes. "It's something for you, a surprise. I won't be long. Back soon. Oh, and don't phone Coral to say I'm on my way. I'll surprise her too. Okay. Bemused, Lily shrugged and watched him back away. As he turned and headed for the car, she called out, "But if my surprise happens to be chocolate truffles, I like milk, not plain." You might think there were only a couple of items you needed to buy, but start pushing a trolley up and down the aisles of a huge supermarket, and it soon began to fill up. Then again, wasn't this why she was here? Having lost her nerve when Lily had cheerfully informed her that Declan was on his way down from London, Coral felt again the rush of adrenaline she'd experienced at the realisation that she was about to come face to face with him once more. And like a perfectly mature and sensible 48-year-old woman, she'd run away. Well, driven away, in an outright panic. Which was completely pathetic and ridiculous because he'd still be there when she arrived home with her bags of shopping. But at least this way she had an extra hour to mentally prepare herself for his arrival. Pausing in the loo roll aisle, Coral reached for the 16-roll multi-pack of their usual brand and added it to the trolley. Oh God, look at her hands. She stopped to examine them, conscious of Trent's parting comment last week. Spending so much time in the reclamation yard had always been hard on her nails. She kept them short, unpolished and workmanlike. Had people been raising their eyebrows at her hands for years, inwardly appalled by the sight of her plain, unglamorous nails? Should she maybe head over to where they sold the makeup and buy a bottle of nail polish? Since procrastination was the order of the day, she wheeled her trolley over to the aisle that segued from shampoos and shower gels to shaving equipment, pharmaceuticals and cosmetics. She was usually in a rush, so it made a nice change to be able to loiter and browse. And goodness, there were so many kinds of polish to choose from. Two women a bit further along were looking at lipsticks, comparing shades on the back of their hands. Idly listening in, Coral wondered whether she should treat herself to a lipstick too. "There's your pink, that's your colour," the dark-haired woman told her blonde friend with an air of authority. "Don't go for that purply one, whatever you do." Coral paid attention. The woman sounded as if she knew what she was on about. When they'd moved away from the lipstick, she would choose a beigey pink one for herself. "Oh my God, what are you buying that stuff for?" The blonde one let out a muffled shriek and jabbed her finger at the slim cardboard package she just spotted in her friend's hands. Gross." "It's okay, calm down," the brunette laughed. "I don't have piles. You use the cream under your eyes to shrink your eye bags and tighten the skin. It's like a miracle, I promise you. A facelift in a tube, all the top beauty experts swear by it." The blonde woman stared at her in disbelief, then turned and clip-clopped back down the aisle. Returning with an identical tube, she brandished it at her friend. "Okay, but only because I trust you. You better not be having me on." Once they'd headed off to the checkouts, Coral moved along to the makeup section and chose the beigey pinkiest of all the lipsticks. Then she selected a nail polish to go with it. Who knew? Maybe in future people would stop shuddering with revulsion at the sight of her naked mouth and fingernails, and life would change out of all recognition. Finally, she sidled down to the bottom cream section and picked up a tube of the stuff the two women had bought. Well, if it was as miraculous as it sounded, may as well give it a whirl. She dropped the tube into the trolley and covered it with some of the much nicer to look at bags of fruit and veg. Okay, now it was probably time to pay. This supermarket might stay open until 10 o'clock in the evening, but she really couldn't put off seeing Declan for that. "Hi," said Declan's achingly familiar voice in her head. No, not in her head. Behind her head. "Ah!" Coral spun round to find him standing right behind her. Oh God, and she'd actually emitted a ridiculous-sounding squawk like a rugby player doing a haka. "Whoops, didn't mean to make you jump. You were miles away." He smiled. "Sorry." She clapped her hand to her breastbone. "It's okay, you just caught me by surprise. What are you doing here?" Which, seeing as he was standing in front of her clutching a security-tagged bottle of Laurent Perrier in each hand, wasn't the brightest of questions. "I've just completed on that Georgian property in Kensington. I thought we should celebrate." He raised his arms, because she evidently wasn't clever enough to recognise 2 bottles of champagne when she saw them. "Anyway, how are you? Looking well. It's good to see you again." Belatedly, he leaned across to greet her with a friendly kiss on the cheek, but the corner of the shopping trolley was trapped between them. It promptly ricocheted off Coral's hip, banged against the supermarket shelving, and sent a piled-up display of cardboard packets careering into her trolley and onto the floor. Not painkillers, nor indigestion tablets, or vitamin pills, oh no. It had to be dozens of packets of condoms, didn't it? God, sorry again, my fault. Declan began hastily scooping them out of the trolley. Doesn't matter, it's fine, let me do that. Desperate for him not to delve down and find the other packet, Coral took over. Why don't you go and pay for the champagne? It's okay, we'll go together. I can help you with everything at checkout. You all done? All done? She was overdone. The supermarket had air conditioning, but she could feel her skin prickling with perspiration as they made their way over to the line of checkouts. While they queued, Declan said, Sorry to hear about you and Trent, by the way. It's all right, those things happen. Well, you know that. It happened to you too. You go first. Coral gestured at the conveyor belt as the customer ahead of them finished paying. Ooh, I say. The middle-aged cashier beamed up at Declan as she rang up the 2 bottles. Someone's got something nice to celebrate. Declan smiled back and said, I hope so. At the exact moment, Coral said, He definitely has. Which caused a bit of confusion. Oh, sorry, said Coral. I thought you said the deal was done. Yes, that one is. Declan looked momentarily flustered. But there's another one I'm still keeping my fingers crossed for. I was wrong then. As the cashier took his card, she confided, When customers buy champagne, I always try to guess why. At first, when I saw you two together, I thought you were celebrating your wedding anniversary. We're not married, Coral blurted out. Then I saw you weren't wearing wedding rings, so I decided it was your birthday and he was taking you out somewhere lovely for your dinner. It's not my birthday, we're just friends. The chatty cashier shrugged, unruffled. All right, isn't that a shame? Oh well, never mind. Want me to unload your trolley for you? Offered Declan. No, I'll do it. You can help with the packing if you like. Coral began busily piling things along the length of the conveyor belt. The friendly cashier started scanning the items through the till. Declan filled up carrier bags. While he wasn't looking, Coral found and deftly removed the tube of pile cream from the trolley and placed it on the non-moving side of the conveyor belt beneath a rack of sweets. Phew, done. She finished the rest of the unloading, then moved the trolley up to the other end and began transferring the filled carriers into it. Hello, is this yours? The voice was clipped, authoritative and boomingly loud. Turning, Coral saw a tall woman in her late 60s brandishing the tube of pile cream. Of course she's brandishing it, because this is my life. No, not mine. She shook her head. Thanks, though. Well, I believe it is yours, the woman persisted, because I saw you take it out of your trolley. Is it yours, love? What is it? The friendly cashier reached out an upturned hand for the item. Want me to put it through the till? No, I don't. Coral's voice went a bit high-pitched. Because it isn't mine, and I don't know what it is because I've never seen it before. It felt as if everyone in the store was now listening to the exchange. Flustered, Coral lifted a bag into the trolley. Except you have, retorted the woman, who clearly had no intention of backing down. And I'm a GP. So shall I tell you why the fact that you're denying it makes me so cross? Because you're ashamed of your own body, that's why. Too embarrassed to admit you have an intimate problem that some people might find amusing. Oh, God. Where was a hole in the ground when you needed one to swallow you up? Coral said, but... You! The loud woman pointed an accusing finger at Declan. Would you still love her if she had piles? As she said it, she put sarcastic air quotes around the word if. Yes, said Declan. I would. Of course I would. Coral just wanted to die. Except they aren't a couple. The cashier shook her head at the loud woman. They're just friends. And I don't have piles, Coral protested. Oh, I give up. Some people just don't want to be helped. The loud woman dropped her wire basket to the floor with a crash and stalked off. Wasn't this one great? The cashier beamed and jerked her thumb at Declan. Jump into your defence like he did, saying he'd still love you even if you did have piles. What a star. I don't have them, though, Coral said faintly. I promise. But everyone was looking at her and smirking. Worse still, she knew none of them believed her for a second. Having paid for their shopping, Declan removed his credit card from the card reader and said brusquely, "Let's just get out of here, shall we? Right now." Mortified, Coral felt herself blushing all over again. Oh dear, he'd clearly had enough. As they left the store, she blurted out, "I'm so sorry about that. How embarrassing." "Look, confession time. I overheard someone saying that stuff was a miracle cure for eye bags. That's all it was. I should have said so straight away. I thought I'd give it a try, but then you turned up and—" "I meant it," Declan interrupted her. "Oh, sorry, of course." All of a fluster, Coral realised he didn't want to listen to her garbled explanation. He just wanted to be out of here, out of the car park, probably well away from her. "Well, look, you can go. I'm fine to unload the trolley on my own. My car's right there." "What are you talking about?" said Declan. "You want to get out of here?" As she steered the trolley over to where her car was parked, Coral said with a slightly hysterical laugh, "And who can blame you?" "Okay, stop." Declan reached for the handle and brought the trolley to a halt. "We're at cross purposes here. When that mad woman asked me if I'd still love you, I said yes. Just now when I said I meant it, well, that's what I meant." Coral stared at him. "What?" "Oh. Oh!" Declan paused too, as if listening to the words that had just come out of his mouth. He raked his fingers through his hair. "Okay, I didn't plan for it to happen quite like this, but I'm saying it now. I'd still love you, I just would, because I already do." Coral was trembling. She wanted to ask if this was a joke, but knew it wasn't. All she could say, with a squeak in her voice, was, "Really?" Declan nodded. "Oh, yes, really. You're amazing. The only reason I bought that cottage was so I'd have an excuse to keep coming down here." Oh, God, imagine that. "I had no idea. You didn't say anything." Declan shrugged. "I didn't know how you felt about me. I thought maybe you weren't ready for another relationship." "And you had Gail," she reminded him. "I know, I felt bad about that. But she was the one who told me you liked me." "Gail said that? Oh my God, how did she know?" Feeling herself flush, Coral stammered, I mean, she asked me, but I said it wasn't true." Declan was searching her face for clues. "Was it not true?" "Are you kidding? Of course it was true. I was mortified." "So then I finished with Gail, but in the meantime you'd run off to Grimo." "Hello? Because I was mortified. And then you met Trent. Because I was so completely desperate to get over you. Plus," said Coral, "still mortified." "Well, I think you can stop being mortified now." Declan's voice softened as he drew her towards him. "I want to kiss you, but I don't know if I can do it here." "Really? Why not?" "Well, I don't know if you've noticed, but we're standing in the middle of a supermarket car park. It's hardly the most romantic setting." "Oh, I don't know. Feels quite romantic to me," murmured Coral. He broke into a smile and lowered his voice. "Also, people are watching us." She wrapped her arms around him and felt months of fear and anxiety melt away. This was what she'd been waiting for. Pausing with her mouth millimeters from his, Coral smiled back at him. "Good." And it turned out that if you wanted it to be, and if you were with the right person, a supermarket car park could be a wonderfully romantic place after all.
End of CD 10. CD 11.
Chapter 50. It was the last week of October, and autumn had well and truly arrived. But today was a sunny, cloudless day, so Lily was able to see everything. From up here, the leaves on the trees glowed red and gold as if they were on fire. "Look over there." Dan was leaning across, pointing out of the window on her side. "Water skiers on the lake." Lily gave his arm a swipe. Will you stop looking out of the window? Watch where you're going. Hey, calm down. He waggled the wings for a second just for fun. This isn't a car. I can't steer it off the road. Well, keep your eye on the instrument panel. I still can't believe you're allowed to drive one of these things. And I really can't believe I'm letting you drive me, said Lily. You're being very brave. He kept a straight face. Although when it's a plane, we do tend to call it flying, not driving. That's the technical term for this up-in-the-air business. It did all look incredibly technical, though. There were so many flight instruments, dials, switches, levers, and different coloured square buttons. Dan had already listed them, rattling off explanations of vertical speed indicators, airspeed indicators, the magnetic compass, and the altimeter. He appeared to know what he was talking about, which was a relief. Lily, who had never seen him actually being a pilot before, kept sneaking sidelong glances at this new professional version of Dan in his crisp white shirt and dark trousers, with his combed-back hair and aviator sunglasses. No wonder he was endlessly being propositioned by girls. The next minute she clutched the sides of her seat and yelped, "What's happening? Are we crashing? Oh, God." "Will you relax? We professionals prefer to call it beginning our descent. Look, there's the River Tamar." Dan was pointing again. "We're crossing into Cornwall. Not long now before you're reunited." He sounded amused. "Try not to make a fool of yourself, okay?" "I'll do my very best." Lily was used to his teasing now. The view of the press was, naturally, that Eddie Tesla had been the one to end the relationship, and since neither of them had commented on the situation, Dan had played along with it. Whether or not he believed it was another matter. "Have some dignity," he said now. "No bursting into tears and begging him to take you back." "I'll try not to do that. And in return, can you try to land this plane?" "Land it? Oh dear, that could be tricky," said Dan. "Hang on, let's see if anyone's left a manual in the glove compartment." It had been Eddie's idea to hire Dan for the day. He was currently making a film in North Cornwall and needed to fly over to Paris for a meeting with an Australian producer. As soon as the meeting was over, he'd be returning to Cornwall. Aware that Dan was now fully recovered and back working for the airline, Eddie had asked if he was free that day and able to lease a small plane to take him to France and back. Which Dan, with his dreams of one day starting up his own charter company, had been only too happy to do. And when Eddie had suggested that Lily might like to fly down with Dan and visit the film set, she jumped at the chance. She smiled at the sight of Eddie walking towards her. The awkwardness was behind them now, and it was great to see him again after that last afternoon in Stanton Langley back in July. While Dan completed the necessary paperwork in the tiny airport office, Lily gave Eddie a hug. "What have they done to you?" "I know." He ruffled his hair, cut spikily short and dyed white blonde for his role in the film. "I keep catching sight of myself in mirrors and getting the shock of my life. Yet another reason why being a screenwriter beats acting." They'd kept in touch by text, but Eddie had been vague about that side of things. Lily said, "Did you finish that screenplay, the one that was giving you so much trouble?" Eddie grimaced and shook his head. "It was a nightmare. I gave up on it in the end. How's everyone at home?" "All good." Lily had kept him updated with the goings-on in Stanton Langley. "Oh, I know what I meant to tell you. In the last couple of weeks, I've heard 3 different people talking about things that have happened in the village, and each of them use you as a time reference. It was all, when Eddie was here, or just after Eddie left. It's like you're a memorable date in the diary, like Christmas." He looked pleased. "That's quite an accolade." "You're the only VIP we've ever had in the village. You never know," said Lily. "We might end up with a giant statue of you up on a plinth outside the pub." Dan emerged from the office. "Everything sorted, all ready to go?" "Absolutely." Eddie was already holding his passport, phone and wallet. There was nothing else he needed. Pointing to the car park, he said to Lily, "My driver's waiting to take you over to the film set. Mira's going to look after you. We'll be back by 5:30. "I'll be fine." Lily was looking forward to seeing Mira Knowles again. "I can't wait to watch the filming." "Oh." Eddie turned back as he and Dan headed across the tarmac to the little plane. "And there's something I want you to take a look at too. It's in the car." "What is it?" His smile was enigmatic, Something. Is it a photograph? Said Lily. No. A boa constrictor? Not a boa constrictor either, amazingly. Will I like it? No idea. I hope so. As he followed Dan to the plane, Eddie called over his shoulder, You can tell me when I get back. The car was an elongated black Mercedes. The driver waiting to open the rear door for her wore a smart grey suit and tie. It was a long way from Lanky Dave in his jeans and holey jumpers, who ran Dave's cabs in Stanton Langley and regarded a day without pickled onion Monster Munch as a day wasted. But that was real life. This, today, was the fantasy one Lily found fun to visit, but still undeniably weird to experience. She paused to watch as the plane containing Dan and Eddie left the ground and rose into the duck-egg blue sky, bound for Paris. Then she climbed into the back of the limo and saw the A4-sized envelope waiting on the seat with her name on it. Inside was a handwritten note from Eddie. That last screenplay you kept asking me about? It was awful and I gave up on it weeks ago. Wrote this instead. Have a read and let me know what you think. Be honest. E. Kiss kiss. P.S. Yes, I know you're always honest. The note was attached to the title page of a printed-out screenplay. Lily did a metaphorical double-take when she saw what it was called, because it was how he'd always jokingly referred to his initial stay in Stanton Langley. 5 days away. They'd arrived at the film set. It had taken 40 minutes to get there from the airfield, but Lily had barely noticed the journey, so engrossed had she been in the film script. Having struggled so badly with the last one, Eddie had evidently taken to heart the age-old advice to write what you know. She raced through it, half dreading what the ending might be. When she saw what he'd written, she closed her eyes and rested her head back against the cream leather upholstery. To her huge surprise, a tear spilled out of each eye and slid down either side of her neck. It wasn't real life, obviously. Not real life, because that would never allow such a neat storyline with all the loose ends tied up. But enough of it was real to make it instantly recognisable. In the opening scene, Eddie finds himself holed up inside a central London hotel, besieged by paparazzi and at the end of his tether. His manager and his publicist are giving him grief and he needs to escape. Cut 2. In the dead of night, he's secretly bundled into a tiny Cotswold cottage belonging to someone he's never met. The woman promises on her life not to tell a soul he's hiding there. Cut 2. Eddie is alone in the cottage when someone starts trying to break in by picking the lock of the front door. He comes face to face with Lily, who lives in the village and is already having a pretty eventful day of her own. It's her 25th birthday, and she's just read a life-changing letter written to her by her mother, who died when she was 8. Lily's eyes snapped open as the window slid down and she heard a familiar voice saying, "What's she doing? Is she fast asleep? Lily, it's me, wake up!" To be fair, the voice would probably be familiar to a large percentage of people on this planet. "I'm not asleep." "Oh, good grief." Lily hastily brushed away the tears. "He didn't warn me you were going to look like that." Mira grinned. She was wearing a nun's habit, a huge prosthetic nose, and a fake whiskery wart on her cheek. Well, hopefully a fake whiskery wart. "Sorry, isn't it brilliant, though? I can go out like this and nobody gives me a second look." Lily raised her eyebrows. "Really?" "Oh, well, not in the habit. But if I change into jeans and a sweater, I can walk around St. Caris and no one even knows it's me. So cool. Anyway, how are you?" Mira enveloped Lily in an enthusiastic embrace. "Try not to knock my wart off." For the next hour, Lily was shown around the location where they were filming and introduced to the rest of the cast and crew. The action was taking place in and around a clifftop hotel overlooking a surfing bay on the North Cornwall coast. The film was an action comedy drama featuring a billion-dollar heist engineered by a 75-year-old grandmother and her niece, played by Mira, masquerading as a nun. Eddie's role was that of the detective aiming to foil their dastardly plot. Lily watched from the clifftop as Mira was filmed scrambling down the steep path to the beach in her nun's habit and a pair of Union Jack Wellingtons. She then had to race across the beach and throw herself down on the sand behind a faded blue rowing boat. It all took ages. The director wanted endless retakes, and each one meant Mira having to be rigorously desanded and sent back up the path before setting off again. "I'm exhausted just watching it," Lily said to the girl next to her. The girl's name was Sophie, and she was married to the owner-manager of the hotel in whose grounds they were standing. Sophie, who'd been taking photos of the filming with an impressive-looking Nikon, said, "And it's easy to slip, too. I once tried to stop a pushchair that was falling down that path." She pulled a face. "It's steeper than it looks from up here." "Did you manage to stop it?" "Just about. Wasn't a soft landing, though. I was pretty battered and bruised." "Ouch." Lily winced in sympathy and nodded at Sophie's front. "Were you—" "Oh, no, thank goodness." Sophie's eyes danced as she briefly rested her free hand on the watermelon-sized bump beneath her sweatshirt. "That was 2 years ago, way before this happened. I take a bit more care getting down that path now I'm pregnant." By 3 o'clock, the shooting moved on to involve other actors, and Mira's work was done for the day. Having changed out of her habit and peeled off her wart, she and Lily retired to a quiet corner of the hotel terrace for coffee and cake. "So have you noticed how wonderfully patient I've been?" Mira finished a slender slice of lemon tart and licked her fingers with relish. "All afternoon I've been dying to ask you, and I haven't." Lily kept a straight face because Mira was as transparent as a child. "You want to play squares?" "Well, obviously I want to play squares. I love squares. But right now, I want to know what you think about Eddie's screenplay." "Have you read it?" "Of course I've read it." "And?" said Lily. "What's your verdict?" "Well, I think it's completely amazing, but I want to know what you think." Lily dropped another spoonful of sugar into her coffee cup and looked thoughtfully across the table at Mira. "I think you haven't read it." Mira looked confused. "What? Why do you say that?" "I'm very clever." "Well, you're not, because you're wrong." "Okay, then," said Lily. "Because Eddie wrote a message for me on one of the pages. It said, 'Don't talk to Mira about this, by the way, before I get back. She's bursting to know what it's about, but I refuse to let her read it. I wanted you to be the first.'" "Sorry." Lily grinned at the look of indignation on Mira's face. "Honestly, what a sneaky bastard." "Quite funny, though." Lily was consoling. "He knows you so well." "That man drives me nuts. Seriously, he's the most annoying person in the world." "Okay, can you give me any clues? I just want to know what it's like." "Can't tell you. He wants to discuss it with me when he gets back." Mira gave her a piteous look. "Oh, please. Just the teeny tiniest hint." "Still no." "Is it good, though?" Lily paused, then nodded. "Yes, it's good." "And that's all you're getting? We're changing the subject now." "Fine, fine." Reaching into her emerald green leather shoulder bag, Mira whipped out a notepad and 2 ballpoint pens. "In that case, please can we play squares?" Chapter 51. "Well," said Eddie. The driver had picked Lily up from St. Caris at 5 o'clock and brought her back to the airfield just as he and Anne were coming into land. During the 40-minute journey, she'd leafed through the screenplay again and thought about what he'd written. Now they were sitting facing each other, drinking hideous cups of tea from the vending machine. The screenplay lay closed on the red Formica table between them. "You sound like Mira," said Lily. Did she try to trick you?" "Of course she tried to trick me."
"And did you tell her anything?"
"I did not. But you'll have to when you get back to that hotel, or she really will burst, like an egg in a microwave."
"And now you're doing exactly the same thing to me," said Eddie.
"What would you do if I said I hated it?"
"I'd destroy it," he replied without hesitation. "Delete everything from the computer. No one else has seen a single word of it. If you aren't completely happy with what I've written, no one else ever will."
Luckily, she didn't need to make him do that. "I think it's amazing," she said, and saw the relief on his face, the relaxation of tension in his jaw.
"Really?"
"God, yes. I mean, I'm no expert, but the way you've done it, everything about it. Well, do you think it's good?" A faint smile lifted the corners of Eddie's mouth.
"Modesty aside, I'm pretty sure it's the best thing I've ever written." Wow. And how does that feel? A damn sight better now I know I don't have to delete it. He sat back on his grey-moulded plastic chair and exhaled with relief. So you're fine for me to show it to a few people then? Lily nodded. I think you should. There's still no guarantee it'll get made, of course. Having forgotten how awful it was, Eddie took a sip of the vending machine tea and grimaced. Other people have to like it too. I know, but I bet they will. God, this is disgusting. He gave up and pushed the plastic cup to one side. Anyway, are you okay with the way it ends? Lily's stomach contracted because she'd been waiting for him to get to this bit. Yes, why not? It's fictionalized, isn't it? You've based the story on what happened to us, but you have to give it a proper conclusion. That's what people want when they go to see a film. You can't just leave them wondering what happens to everyone. Eddie said, I used poetic license. Exactly. Lily nodded vigorously in agreement. You couldn't have a boring old real-life ending, could you? That'd be a complete letdown. And Dan won't mind either, he'll think it's hilarious. Silence. Eddie was watching her. How about if it isn't poetic license? He said finally. Lily's heart began to race. But it isn't real, is it? Because it hasn't happened, you just wrote it that way. In the screenplay, Eddie's character made his peace with the idea of fame and returned to work with fond memories of the girl who had helped him during his 5 days away. And Lily's character ended up getting a romantic, happy ending with the long-term friend whose bad boy lady-killing ways had only ever been a cover, a way of concealing his true feelings for her. Eddie's gaze was unwavering. What if I wrote it that way because it could be true? It couldn't, though. In a film, maybe, but not in real life. Her palms were prickling with embarrassment now because she was practically coming out and admitting it. Oh, God. Then again, you never know, do you? Not until you give it a try. He shrugged. Just putting it out there. He knew. She didn't know how he knew, but he did. Abandoning all pretense, she said, When I told you I'd kissed someone else, you never did ask me who it was. This time, Eddie gave her one of those famous movie star smiles of his. The kind that had turned a million girls' knees to mush and helped to propel him to stardom. Oh, Lily, there wasn't any need to ask. I already knew. The drone of the aircraft's engine was comfortingly steady as they flew through the night sky back to Oxfordshire. Cocooned in inky darkness, Lily peered at the silver stars above them, the almost full moon over to their right and the snaking lines of golden dots from the car headlights, street lamps and illuminated buildings on the ground far below. At least Dan, piloting the little plane, didn't know what was going on inside her head. Eddie had promised her that much. By the way, Dan broke the silence between them. When Eddie told you he hadn't said anything to me, he was lying. Lily's stomach abruptly plummeted as if they'd hit an air pocket. Unable to look at him, she stared directly ahead. Said anything to you about what? Everything. All of it. His voice was steady. The whole lot. And he'd chosen this moment to announce it. Terrific! Lily cleared her throat and adjusted her headset. Why are you telling me this now? Because I have to, and I thought it might be easier up here. Can you do something for me? Like what? Jump out of this plane right now with no parachute? Easily. Close your eyes, Dan instructed, and listen to me while I tell you a story. Was this the voice of doom? Was he about to let her down gently, explain to her that of course he hoped they'd always be friends, good friends, but there couldn't possibly ever be anything more than that? It was, after all, exactly what she had done to Eddie. Talk about tit for tat. What kind of story? Said Lily. A true one. Go on, keep your eyes closed. And I know this won't be easy, but if you could also manage to keep quiet and not interrupt, that would be great. Lily's nails were digging into her palms. Her mouth was dry and she felt sick. Right. Are you sitting comfortably? Dan paused. When she'd nodded, he said,
Then I'll begin. There was once a boy who liked to torment a girl. When they were young, he did it all the time, and it was practically the highlight of his life. Then, as the years went by and they got older, he realized he liked her in a whole different way. But the girl didn't feel the same about him, so nothing ever changed. To make himself feel better, the boy did everything he could to find someone else he liked more, but that turned out to be pretty much impossible, because that person simply didn't exist. So he carried on being just good friends with the girl he wished he could be more than just good friends with. And although he always hoped that one day she'd change her mind about him, he'd pretty much given up on it ever actually happening. Lily's eyes were still closed. Dan's voice was low and intimate, seeping through her headset and into her brain. So anyway, that's the story part over, he continued. Now we'll move on to the screenplay thing. Eddie talked to me about it on our way over to Paris. I didn't know you told him about that kiss at the lake. He said when he heard about it, that was when he knew for sure. And he asked me if he was right. And I said yes. Then he said, didn't I think it was about time I did something about it and told you the truth? And he was right, of course. But it turns out I'm a coward when it comes to saying stuff like that, which is why I'm doing it now, up here, where you can't run away. I love you, Lily. I have always loved you, and I always will. But if you don't want to hear this, all you have to do is ignore me and we'll pretend it never happened. Okay, we can't pretend it didn't happen, Dan amended, but we can never mention it again. If that's what you prefer, all you have to do is open your eyes and change the subject. Point out of the window and say something like, "Oh, is that a UFO over there?" And then I'll know. Lily opened her eyes, her throat so choked with emotion she couldn't speak. The next moment she spotted a small but intensely bright ball of red light rising up through the night sky, heading towards them. Letting out a muffled shriek, she pointed and yelped, "Oh my God, it's a—" Then the red ball transformed into a giant crimson chrysanthemum that was instantly joined by a sapphire, bright white and orange bursts of light, exploding beneath their flight path like gigantic flowers blooming on fast forward. "It's a fireworks display!" Belatedly realising that Dan might think she was choosing a creative way to change the subject, Lily exclaimed, "It was a firework I saw, not a UFO! I love you too!" He turned to look at her as they flew over the multicoloured carpet of fireworks exploding far below them. Really? Really? In the just good friends way, do you mean? He'd sounded so calm before, but he wasn't feeling calm at all, Lily realised. He was double-checking, being cautious, needing confirmation, and it just made her love him more. Not in a just good friends way at all. Quite the opposite kind of way, actually. She felt her stomach unknot and broke into a smile, finally unafraid to reveal her true feelings. At last, she could be honest. "There's never been anyone else for me either. It's always been you." "I can't believe this." Dan reached across for her hand. "I just can't believe it's happening. I want to kiss you, but—" "You have a plane to fly," said Lily. Every single cell in her body was zinging with anticipation at the thought of what lay ahead. "Are we nearly home yet?" He gave her fingers a squeeze. "I suppose we've waited 15 years, so another 15 minutes won't kill us. Unless... Have you ever had sex in a cockpit before?" "Waiting might not kill us," said Lily, "but sex in a cockpit definitely would. Let's get our priorities right and land safely, shall we?" Dan was grinning at her. "You're the boss." Chapter 52. 1 year later. It wasn't every day you got to see yourself plastered across a huge poster advertising a hotly anticipated, about-to-be-released movie. Lily couldn't stop gazing up at it. Okay, it wasn't actually her face on the poster, but it was the face of the actress bringing her to life on the screen. And having your character played by Mira Knowles was still pretty amazing, not to mention surreal. "Well," said Dan at her side. "How does it feel?" "Weird." Lily leaned against him.
They'd viewed the poster online, but this was the first time they'd experienced it in the flesh, so to speak, full-sized and on display for everyone to see. Wait till millions of people have seen the film. That'll be weirder. Dan brushed his warm mouth against her cheek. We should check into the hotel. You haven't heard from Patsy, have you? She didn't reply to my text. Right on cue, Lily's phone began to ring. She glanced at the screen. This is Patsy now. Hi, where are you? Have you left yet? We're not going to be able to make it. The line was crackly and Patsy was sounding distant and out of breath. I'm having contractions. Oh, Lily, it's happening. I'm in labour. Lily's mouth dropped open. What? Oh, my God, really? Right this minute? Are you in hospital? We're heading there now. Ow. Hang on a sec. She's having the baby, Lily told Dan. They're on the way to the hospital right now. Dan regarded her with amusement. You sound so astonished. She's been pregnant for the last 39 weeks. You know, it had to come out sooner or later. Lily gave him a thump on the arm. I know, but it's exciting. Pats, can you hear me? Do you want us to come back? Okay, contractions past. I'm here again. No way, Patsy exclaimed. You've got a premiere to go to. No, you do your thing and I'll do mine. We'll see you tomorrow. Ooh, this weather. Is it raining in London? Still sunny here. Lily glanced up at the clear blue sky. Hasn't rained at all. How's Oliver doing? Trying to be brave on the surface, but underneath he's panicking like a... Ooh! Well, tell him to drive carefully, said Lily. She loved Oliver, they all did. The night Patsy had been stood up had turned out to be the best night of her life. Ah! Patsy gasped. I will. Patsy's last "ag" hadn't been another contraction. Rather, it had been due to the fact that she discovered the flooded lane they were travelling down was more flooded than they'd first thought. To be fair to Oliver, you couldn't say he hadn't been driving carefully. He'd driven very carefully indeed through the water when it was only a few inches deep, and there had been no indication whatsoever that the lane would suddenly dip and the water become much deeper. Poor Oliver. It wasn't his fault. He wasn't familiar with this nifty shortcut she told him to take. Patsy, who was familiar with both the shortcut and the sudden dip, had been too busy talking to Lily to pay attention. The rain was lashing down around them. On the radio there were reports of flash flooding throughout Gloucestershire and Oxfordshire, and there were warnings that the emergency services were at full stretch. Patsy looked at Oliver, the man who had made the last year the happiest of her life, and saw his hand tremble slightly as he turned the key in the ignition. Nothing happened. The engine was flatly refusing to start. It was like trying to turf a sleeping teenager out of bed with a plastic spoon. Patsy witnessed the growing panic in Oliver's eyes as the realization sank in that they could be in real trouble here. And as if in sympathy with the tension in his jaw, the ominous tightening sensation started up again inside her stomach. As before, the first few seconds were fine. Then it carried on beyond an acceptable level and became a wave of pain so intense it took her breath away. Ow! Ow! Okay, here goes. Abandoning his attempt to start the engine, Oliver opened the driver's door and jumped into a foot of murky brown water. Maybe if I can push us out, it'll do the trick. He was strong, but not that strong. Under the circumstances, Rambo himself might have struggled. As Patsy clutched her enormous stomach and panted her way through the contraction, Oliver tried and failed to move the car either backwards or forwards, climbing back inside like a sodden drowned rat. Actually, more like a drowned bear, he said in a strained voice. We'd better call an ambulance. If there was one available. Patsy's phone, which had slid to the floor during the last agonising contraction, began to ring. In their central London hotel, Dan was stretched out on the huge bed in their room, watching as Lily began getting herself ready for the evening ahead. Her hair, still wet from the shower, was rippling down the back of her white toweling bathrobe. Her dress was hanging up in the steamy bathroom to get the last few wrinkles out of the peacock blue silk. It was early, still only 4 o'clock, but they were meeting Eddie and Mira for a catch-up before the main event. What are you looking at? Lily was eyeing him through the mirror as she smoothed foundation into her cheeks. "Some girl I fancy," said Dan. "And why are you watching her?" "Just wondering if I've got a chance of persuading her back into bed." "You already had your chance and you took it." Lily's eyes sparkled as she finished blending in the foundation and reached for her pot of blusher. Dan loved to watch her doing her makeup. She was fast, but the result was always impressive. He loved the way she widened her eyes as she applied mascara to her long lashes, then leaned forward and raised her eyebrows in order to brush darker shadow into the sockets of her eyes. He adored the way she put on lipstick, pouting, then pressing her lips together. And he knew he'd never tire of watching her tilt her head this way and that as she sprayed scent behind each ear, along her collarbones, and, always the final squish, down her cleavage. Basically, he just loved every single thing about her, more than he could have imagined possible. His friends and work colleagues might tease him for having become a one-woman man, but they didn't know the half of it. If they could only be aware of the thoughts that went through his brain, they wouldn't believe he was the same person. But he was, and he was finally the person he'd always wanted to be. Being with Lily had made his life complete, and he knew without a shadow of a doubt that he never wanted them to be apart. Hence the plans he'd made for tonight. The call on Patsy's phone had come from Sean, just to let her know that he and Will were about to leave Stanton Langley and head up to London for the premiere. When she told him where she was, Sean had said at once, "Don't bother calling an ambulance. Stay where you are. We're on our way." They arrived 20 minutes later, appearing through the torrential rain like two knights on a shining white charger. Okay, in a muddy grey Range Rover, but Patsy wasn't complaining. Her contractions were now less than 5 minutes apart, and she was in a world of pain. "Has she had it yet?" Sean leapt down from the passenger seat and was instantly up to his knees in water. Within 2 seconds, his hair was plastered to his head, his sweatshirt and jeans soaked through. "No? Jolly good. Let's get her out of there, shall we?" "Hurrah!" Patsy clenched her teeth as the next contraction seized her in its remorseless grip. "Hurrah!" Will backed up the Range Rover, sending waves of water whooshing into the footwell of the car. Oliver and Sean linked arms, and between them they managed to carry Patsy across to the 4x4 and lift her onto the back seat. Oliver waded back, collected her case and locked the car. Then the four of them headed off through the biblical downpour to the hospital where Patsy was due to give birth. 30 minutes later, they sloshed into the car park. Will pulled the Range Rover up outside the entrance to the maternity unit, and Sean raced inside, located a wheelchair and brought it out for Patsy to be loaded into. "I feel like a sack of potatoes," Patsy panted as they pushed her into the reception area. "That's exactly what you feel like," said Sean, "only heavier." Despite the pain, Patsy laughed and tried to hit him. The receptionist said cheerfully to Sean, "So you're the baby's father, I take it?" "Not me." Sean shook his head. "I'm the ex-husband." "Oh, right, sorry. Is it you, then?" Taking in the impressively broad shoulders and huge biceps, the receptionist beamed at Will. Ow, wrong again." Patsy puffed away through the next contraction. "He's my ex-husband's boyfriend." "But you never know," Will said cheerily, because they were currently interviewing potential surrogate mothers. "You might see us back here in a year or two when we have one of our own." "Right, I see." The receptionist, who had clearly encountered every possible variation in her time, turned to Oliver and said brightly, "So how about you, dear? Third time lucky, or are you a taxi driver just here to pick someone up?" "Ow, ow, ow," said Oliver, because Patsy was squeezing his hand so tightly his fingers had gone blue. Then he broke into a huge smile suffused with pride. "I picked her up 15 months ago. Yes, I'm the father." "Well, that's great," said the receptionist. "And how many of you are staying for the birth?" "Not me." Will looked horrified. "Nor me." Sean took the keys to the Range Rover from Will. "We're off to the cinema to see a film." Oliver rubbed his crushed fingers. "Looks like it's just me, then." Then he rested his hand on Patsy's shoulder and shook his head in wonderment. "I'm going to be a dad. I can't believe it." "I'm going to be a mum." Patsy smiled up at him. "And we're going to have a baby." Oliver marvelled. And it's not going to be born in the back seat of a broken-down car, thanks to us. Sean struck a manly pose. We're like gay superheroes. OK, the midwife will be along to see you any minute now, the receptionist told Patsy before turning her attention back to Sean and Will. So, what film is it you're off to see? It's called 5 Days Away, said Will. Oh, that one. Gosh, I had no idea it was even out yet. It was filmed not far from here, did you know that? Starring Eddie Tesler and Mira Knowles. Oh, I love those two, the receptionist exclaimed. I've heard it's supposed to be really good. Prior to the premiere, everyone had gathered in a private room at the hotel where they were staying. Champagne was served, members of the cast and crew met up once more with the characters Eddie had based his screenplay on, and the producer and director both gave brief speeches to say how incredibly proud they were of the end result. Any news about Patsy? Once the speeches were over, Eddie joined Lily, who took out her phone and checked that no new text had come through while it was switched off. Not yet. Oliver said they'll be back in touch once it's over. We're not allowed to call them because apparently she's busy being in labour and it's distracting. So who knows when we'll hear? Could be any minute now, said Lily. Or tomorrow morning. That's the trouble with babies, said Eddie. They're such divas, so self-centred and unpredictable. Lily said, And now it's my turn to ask. Do you have any news? About what? Whatever you like. But I'm kind of wondering if there's anything you'd like to tell me about you and Mira. Silence. Eddie was looking at her. Finally, he said, Are you a witch? Lily grinned. Considering you're actually a pretty good actor, you haven't been able to hide it very well. Even Dan noticed something was going on with you two, and he's a man. He gave in with good grace. Oh, well, we're just trying to keep the press off our backs for a bit longer. It'll come out sooner or later. 2 years we've known each other, 3 films we've made together, and all that time we were just friends. Then a couple of weeks ago we met up in New York and everything changed. That's brilliant. Lily truly meant it. I'm so happy for you. It might not last. It's great at the moment. As he spoke, Eddie's gaze settled on Mira across the room, talking to Will and Sean. But you never know how things will work out, do you? Especially in our business. He pulled a face. I'm still pretty new to it, remember? Mira was a child star. She's been famous her whole life. She's incredible and I love being with her, but she hasn't exactly had a normal upbringing. Turning to look at them from 30 feet away, Mira winked at Lily. On the other hand, I have amazing hearing, ears like a bat. The waiters were collecting up glasses. It was time for everyone to leave the hotel and make their way across to Leicester Square. Heard anything? Coral joined Lily and Eddie while Dan and Declan went to check the cars were waiting for them outside. Still no news. You look fantastic, said Lily. Do I? Are you sure? Coral smoothed down her coffee silk dress. These heels are killing me. I can't believe I'm about to walk down an actual red carpet. Declan was at the doorway beckoning to them. Lily said, You can take your shoes off as soon as we're inside the cinema. But I don't want to rush in, Coral protested. It's going to be my one and only real-life red carpet experience. I want to make it last as long as I can. Chapter 53. Patsy was roaring now. Oh, God! The unearthly noise she was making. She sounded like a wild animal and she felt like one too. Panting hard and aware of the perspiration trickling down her forehead, she opened her eyes and gasped. Sorry, I'm sorry. Is this completely putting you off me? Oliver mopped her forehead with a wrung-out cold flannel and smiled down at her. It's not putting me off you. Are you sure? Because what if you're thinking this is the most hideous experience of your life and you can't stand the sound of me howling like a wolf? Ow! Oh, make it stop! Wah! Okay, listen to me, Oliver said when the contraction had eased off. You look beautiful. You're having my baby and I'm not going anywhere. I already love both of you and one of you hasn't even been born yet. The warmth of his reassuring words flooded through her. Patsy felt her heart swell and her anxiety recede. This wonderful man was the best thing that had ever happened to her, With Oliver at her side, she could do anything, including giving birth to something the size of a prize-winning pumpkin. "Right then, Patsy," the midwife announced from her position at the foot of the bed. "You're 10 centimetres dilated, my darling. It's all systems go now. Time to start pushing this baby out." Lily and Declan were standing back, watching the stars of 5 Days Away do their thing on the red carpet for the barrage of cameras as photographers jostled for the best shots. "Enjoying yourself?" said Declan. "Well, I haven't spotted any runaway mice this time, which is a bonus. It's a lot easier not being the centre of attention, although some people seem to be having fun." Lily twisted the crystal-studded bangle on her wrist and smiled at the sight of Coral being photographed with the actresses who'd played her and Patsy in the film. Coral was loving every glamour-packed second, every camera flash and scream of delight, not to mention the buzzy air of excitement that was whoa. Lily's gaze, which had been skating idly over the massed crowds lined up on the other side of the barriers, suddenly screeched to a halt. She zoned in on the face of someone she'd never met, but whom she was nevertheless pretty sure she recognised. Oh, goodness, was it really her? The girl was small and thin, with a pale, heart-shaped face, straight dark hair falling to her shoulders, and unflinching bright blue eyes. She was wearing a stripy grey sweater under a pink puffer jacket and was clutching a phone in her hand. From here, she blended in perfectly, looking like every other film fan. It was the way she was completely ignoring the stars on the red carpet in order to look at Lily that was the real giveaway. Declan touched her arm. "Everything okay?" "Yes," Lily nodded. "I've just seen my half-sister." "What? Where?" "At the front of the barriers, pink puffer jacket." As Lily was murmuring the words, the girl raised her free hand slightly, did a little wave, and broke into a crooked smile. "I see her now. What are you going to do?" "Ignore her." Lily waited, then gave Declan a nudge. "Hey, she's my half-sister. I'm going to go over there and say hello." "Push, Patsy. Take a deep breath and push down as hard as you can." "And again. Come on, Patsy, you can do it," cried the midwife. "Grrrr!" "That's it." Oliver was urging her on too, letting her grip his hands and heroically not complaining about the pain she was inflicting on him. "One more push. I can see the head," the midwife said. "Let's get this done, shall we? Okay, brace yourself, here we go." "Hi." Sasha's eyes were bright. "Do you know who I am?" "Of course I do. I recognised you straight away from your photo in the paper." "And are you okay with this? I mean, me turning up today?" Lily nodded. "Oh yes, definitely." It wasn't something she'd mentioned to anyone else, but deep down a tiny part of her had wondered if it might happen like this one day. "I didn't even know for sure if you'd be here," said Sasha. Up close, she had a scattering of freckles across her nose and the faintest sign of a dimple in her cheek. "And I know I said last year I wasn't bothered about meeting you, but, well, that was then. I'm older now, more mature. I thought maybe I'd like to see you after all." She was 16 and full of spirit. Charmed, Lily said, "I'm glad. In case you're wondering, I'm a lot nicer than my father. Our father," Sasha amended. Lily said, "Well, that's good. Hopefully I am too." The younger girl's thin face lit up when she smiled. "I suppose we could hardly be worse. Honestly, you didn't miss out on anything growing up. You were better off without him." She hesitated. "Could I take a photo of us together? Would that be all right with you?" "I'd love it," said Lily. When it was done, she said, "They're going to want us to head inside in a minute. Can I see you later?" Sasha pulled a regretful face. "The thing is, I've got to catch the train home, school tomorrow. It's GCSEs this year," she explained. "I want to get as many A stars as I can." After a pause, she added frankly, "Maybe next summer when exams are over we can meet up again. You can give me your number if you like so I can text you. I wouldn't be a nuisance, I promise." Lily took the girl's phone and keyed in her number. "You wouldn't be a nuisance anyway." She handed the phone back. "I've never been a big sister before. Text me whenever you want. I'd like that very much." The red carpet had been cleared and the press pen had emptied. Lily, along with the rest of their party, was making her way through the cinema foyer when Dan's phone rang. Whoa! He stopped in his tracks and held up his hand. It's Patsy. Everyone in the foyer fell silent. Cast and crew alike had got to know Patsy during their weeks of filming in Stanton Langley. There'd also been some lively betting on the weight of the baby when it arrived. Hey, said Dan. How was everything? Lily loved the way Dan's voice softened as he spoke on the phone to his sister. He listened for several seconds before breaking into an unstoppable grin. Yes? That's brilliant. Fantastic. Well done, you. Listen, are you decent? Okay then, let me call you back on FaceTime. You can tell everyone yourself. And seconds later, with the volume turned up to maximum, Lily and Coral and the others surrounding Dan saw Patsy's flushed, happy face appearing on the screen of his phone. Hello, hello! She waved from her hospital bed. Sorry to interrupt your premiere, but I've got someone here for you to meet. He weighs 8 pounds and 2 ounces and we love him to bits. Everyone cheered as Patsy lifted up her newborn son, wrapped in a white blanket, and presented him to the camera. For those at the back who can't see, Dan announced, he looks like a baby. He's beautiful, Lily exclaimed. You clever thing. I know, thank you. Patsy was beaming. I'm so happy. I don't believe it. 8 pounds 2 ounces. Dan shook his head in resignation. And I had 20 quid on 8.5. This is bad news. Hey, Pats, I don't suppose you could pop him back in for a few more days so he can... No, Dan, Lily chimed in. She probably doesn't want to do that. Dan? Patsy was firm. Lily's right. You see, this is what I have to put up with, Dan said mournfully. A sister who's just plain selfish. Don't worry, Lily shook her head at Patsy. I'll deal with him later. You get some rest now, you deserve it. Have you chosen a name yet? Not yet. Patsy glanced down with pride at her son. We thought we'd wait until he arrived, then see what he looked like. Risky, said Dan. What if he'd looked like E.T.? If he had, said Patsy, we'd have named him after you. In the darkened cinema, Lily was completely wrapped up in the film playing on the screen. She'd read the script, watched some of the scenes being shot on location, and Eddie had even shown them the initial rough-cut version. But actually seeing the polished end result was just the most extraordinary experience. Somehow, from the real-life bones of a story, Eddie had written something amazing, and the director had brought it to the screen in a way that was both funny and sad, quirky and emotional. Eddie was playing himself. Her own character was played by Mira, and a gorgeously charismatic up-and-coming actor called Ronan Morell had captured Dan's character to a T. It was fictionalized reality, but so recognisable that Lily felt as if she were living and breathing the film, even those scenes created by Eddie that had never actually happened. And now the film was nearing the end. Next to her, Lily felt Dan reach for her hand, and as always, the intimacy of the gesture gave her a thrill. Up on the screen, Eddie was being presented with an award for his work, receiving a standing ovation and listening to the applause as it rang out around the theatre. Then it cut to the next scene, with him being driven back along a winding road to his multi-million-dollar home in the Hollywood Hills. There, barefoot and still clutching his award, he wandered alone through the vast empty rooms, then stood on the terrace gazing out at the glittering view spread out below. And then it cut to the cottage in the Cotswolds where he'd first met Lily. But that had been then, and this was now. Outside, visible through the window, snow was falling. Inside, in the living room, a fire was burning in the grate, and the squashy, faded blue sofa was occupied by Mira and Ronan, playing the characters of Lily and Dan. They were lying contentedly together, laughing and playing with a boisterous mongrel puppy with a waggy tail and soft, oversized paws. This bit, Lily knew, had needed several takes because the puppy had kept doing a little wheeze of excitement over Mira's jeans. In the cinema, Dan leaned closer and whispered, "We could get a puppy if you like." On the screen, the camera panned in and you could see that the Lily character was wearing a ring on her left hand. The Dan character was saying something that was making her laugh harder. In the cinema, real Dan said in a low voice, "Fancy getting married?" Lily's heart gave an adrenaline-filled jolt. She whispered back, "I wouldn't mind. Who to?" She felt Dan shifting in his seat, altering his grip on her left hand. The next moment, something smooth was being slid onto the third finger, and he was murmuring in her ear, "Sorry, I'd get down on one knee, but there just isn't room." In the almost total darkness of the cinema, Lily held up her left hand and blinked in disbelief at the rectangular diamond glinting back at her. "Oh my God, is this real?" Dan was smiling. "Well, believe it or not, I didn't buy you a ring from a market stall." She loved him so much. So much. "You know what?" Her voice quavering with emotion, she shifted towards him and reached over to stroke the side of his beautiful face. "I think I might quite like to marry you." "Good," Dan whispered. "I think I'd like it too." They'd managed to miss the closing moments to the film, but it really didn't matter. Up on the big screen, the credits had begun to roll, and everyone else in the audience was breaking into a tumultuous wave of applause that reverberated around the huge theatre. But it was all just background noise now. Lost in the moment, Lily gazed at Dan as he took her in his arms. "You and me." And when he'd finished kissing her, she saw the look of genuine love in Dan's eyes as he said, "Oh yes, definitely. Always." That is the end of You and Me Always. It was written by Jill Mansell and read by Imogen Wild. This has been an ISIS Audiobooks presentation. Previous titles from ISIS by this author include Sheer Mischief, Open House, Two's Company. For further details of our extensive catalogue of unabridged audiobooks, please call our free phone number 0800 731 5637 or visit our website www.isis-publishing.co.uk.